We have been joined this morning by the Sheriff's Honor Guard, who will present colors. Once colors are presented, I will ask you to pledge. So if the audience will please rise for the presentation of colors.
Attention. Forward. On. Forward. March. Left. Face. Reset. On.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Up. Forward. March.
Thank you very much. I think we did. All right. Not every day we get something like that. It's kind of fun. The clerk will go ahead and read the statement of meeting procedures, please.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of March 16th, 2010. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all pagers and cell phones be either turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. All right, this is time for public comment, the time when any member of the public may address the board for up to 3 minutes on any item that is not on our agenda, understanding that we cannot take action on the item. Any member of the public wish to address the board at this time? And seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to Supervisors Committee reports. I see Supervisor Holmes might have something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have 2 items. For the past 2 years, I've been the chair of the Sierra Sacramento Valley Emergency Medical Services Agency. This agency is made up of 5 counties: Yolo, Sutter, Yuba, Nevada, and Placer. Last year, we had an application from Butte County and from Colusa County to join the agency. They are now non-voting members until the paperwork's done, then they will become in as members. Subsequently, we've had requests from Tehama County, Trinity County, Siskiyou County, Shasta County, and Lassen County to join as well. That causes some concern for the agency board. We want to make sure that we can handle the new counties coming on board, so we've given direction to the executive director to research the proposition and bring back some information. This will require an expansion of the board. It will also require expansion of the services staff and probably a satellite office in the Redding area. If they come on board, that leaves 4 counties in Northern California: Modoc, Plumas, Sierra, and Glenn, that will be without a medical services agency, and so we also have to look at them and see what what their intentions are. So anyhow, I just wanted to let the board know that this is in the works. We already have Calusa and Butte have approached us, and we've accepted them in. So now we'll have a 7-member board. It'll be a big board if we have the rest of these counties coming in. So I'll keep you posted as we move along. And as the board is aware, I'm the chairman for the past 2 years of the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. I don't know how I got railroaded into that. You didn't have to do that.
Oh, no, you didn't have to do that.
Well, last week I was in Washington, D.C. With some representative from Intercity Rail, from the Los Angeles, San Diego run, San Joaquin, and then, of course, the Capital Corridor. And we had 3 items that we wanted to impress on our congressional delegation and members of the Federal Railroad Administration. Number one, the Amtrak board has consistently been 5 members. It's been expanded to 9. There are 3 members have been in the process of appointment. The only thing that they have in common is there's nobody from California is on that board. So we're pressing to get that last seat for a member from California to be on the Amtrak board. It's interesting to note that the 3 intercity rail in California, the San Diego, Los Angeles intercity rail is the 2nd most popular in the nation. Capital Corridor is the 3rd most popular, and the San Joaquin is the 5th most popular. So 1/5 of all Amtrak riders are in California. So it's important to get someone from at least the western United States on that Amtrak board. Supervisor Roger Dickinson from Sacramento, who has been supervisor for many years, we put his name forward. We met with Congressman Matsui, Congressman Cardosa, and Congressman Garamendi to move that forward. The new buzzword in D.C. and then throughout the state is this high-speed rail. The intercity rail corridors are concerned that if this high-speed rail goes in and we don't have connectivity to the high-speed rail, it's not going to be very advantageous to have to drive your car to catch the high-speed rail. So we've got several projects in place. We've got the 20% match from the state, so we're asking for the federal match to improve the intercity rail connectivity to the future high-speed rail. And then last, we talked about positive train control. As you know, the big accident down in, I believe it was Chatsworth, Senator Feinstein wants to see positive train control. This is the system that has the trains can talk to each other, so if they're coming together, they can stop. We had several meetings, but the one that was kind of disappointing was with the Senator Feinstein staff when we asked where the money was going to come from. There was $50 million put in the 09 budget from the president's budget, but nothing for this year. And so we were asking for $100 million. We asked for Senator Feinstein's support since this is her baby, but her staff members pretty much left a cryptic message saying, you need to go figure it out for yourselves. That was what I got out of that meeting. So anyhow, I'll keep you apprised as that. That's going to be very expensive, probably about $600 million to put positive train control in place. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you for your updates. Just a comment as opposed to, I guess, a question. You're familiar with what we have been going through with the Golden Sierra JPA and the issue of who has the obligation created by the JPA for the staff. And as you're looking at expanding that JPA, it might be a good time to make sure that the appropriate language is in that JPA agreement.
It is already in the agreement with Calusa and Butte. So,
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Wygant.
Just like to underline the good press we got yesterday over the weekend about the opening of the Sunset Interchange. I want to congratulate staff on some fantastic work. The project came in under budget and early. It is not completely finished yet. It's important to keep that in mind. We actually need some hot weather to finish up some of that work. But it's a partnership project between the cities of Rockland, Roseville, and the county, and just want to emphasize that.
And Jennifer?
Just wanted to also let the board know that we had some really wonderful kudos from the Sierra Sun. They have a cheers and jeers section. We actually got some cheers for our action that we took, I believe, 2 board meetings ago when we authorized monies for 5 additional bus shelters in the Tahoe Basin region and garbage and recycling cans to go in those. We have long had a real need for bus shelters for folks using transit up there, and the Sierra Sun really gave a nice shout out to us for doing the right thing on that, so I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that.
And I don't have a report, but seeing Sheriff Bonner and my colleague Supervisor Wygant here, I just want to congratulate them both on their overwhelming re-elections to their respective posts. Best campaign you can run. So congratulations to the sheriff as well as to the other county-wides that filed and ran unopposed. I think it is testament to the fact that our county is exceedingly well-run at all levels, through the elected department heads, through the Board of Supervisors, and through the CEO's office. Yes, we have our squabbles around the fringes from time to time, but at the core, our county remains very solidly managed financially as well as personnel-wise, and so I congratulate Supervisor Wygant and Sheriff Bonner, as well as some of the other county-wides who are running unopposed for re-election. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to department. Yes, I'm sorry, Tony. You had a
Chairman, looking at the agenda on page 179 of your agenda is the closed session staffing material. It correctly reflects the actual agenda. Somehow in the communications, something got dropped off on the blue sheet. So on page 5, item 17, we will be discussing, in addition to the one property management issue already listed, we will also be discussing a property negotiations dealing with a right-of-way issue down on the Auburn Folsom Road construction project, and it's correctly listed on page 179, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that we will be discussing that later this morning, and that has to do with the property, I guess, owned by the Cardozas and the trust.
That would be under 17B. It would be an item B, I'm guessing?
Yes, 17BB.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to department head items. Okay. I'm sorry? You know what? We didn't do consent agenda. So we should probably, do the formality at least, I guess, of getting over there. Thank you, Supervisor Holmes. This 8:30 start throws me off every time. All right, any comments by any board members on anything on the consent agenda? Any members of the public have anything that they wish to speak to that is on our consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent?
I move approval. Second.
Motion Supervisor Holmes, second Wygant to approve consent. Roll call, please.
Holmes?
Aye.
Wygant?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. Thank you. At this point, we will take our first department head item. That is administrative services. Mr. Bogan and the... Oh, no, it's not. Unless he got better looking. I don't know.
Good morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board. My name is April Pay. I'm a senior buyer with the Procurement Services Division, and today I'm here to request your approval of Agenda Item 10, which is a recommendation to renew expiring blanket purchase orders with Vulcan Materials of Grass Valley and Roseville and Tykert Aggregates of Martis Valley for asphaltic concrete materials that will be used by the Road Division for maintaining the county roads on an as-needed basis. The current blanket POs were originally awarded to Vulcan as the result of a competitive bid last year, and the blanket PO with Tykert was awarded based on informal quotes due to lack of responses from vendors in that area. With your approval, blanket POs totaling $880,000 will be issued for a one-year period. This, by the way, represents a reduction of $158,000 from last year's contracts. And with that, I'd like to ask if you have any questions.
Questions by any board members on this item? Any member of the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Motion Supervisor Holmes, second Wygant to approve the item. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. All right, we'll move on to minutes. These are normally carried on our consent agenda, but seeing as how I was absent for one, Supervisor Rockholm was absent for another, we will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our February 9, 2010 board meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Wygant, second by Holmes to approve the minutes of the February 9th board meeting, and the clerk will note that I will be abstaining from this vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. One abstention, myself. Thank you. And then a motion to approve the minutes of the February 23rd, 2010 board meeting. We have a motion Montgomery, second Wygant to approve the minutes of the February 23rd. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you so much. Move on to County Executive. Anita.
Good morning, Chairman Mueller, board members. Anita Reese from the County Executive Office. Today we're requesting that your board accept the third set of recommendations from the Cost Savings Task Force various subcommittees and authorize the County Executive Office to proceed with the identified cost-saving measures and/or productivity enhancements or improvements reflected in the recommendations. A little bit of background. Back in February 2009, your board directed, as part of a related action to realize budgetary savings in future years, the formation of a cost savings task force to analyze and develop implementation strategies for cost-saving solutions by county employees. The task force comprises 6 subcommittees whose members include volunteers from the management and confidential teams. The subcommittees are purchasing, organizational, automation and information technology, benefits, transportation, and miscellaneous. These subcommittees forward the recommendations to the Clearinghouse Committee, which also consists of management representatives from all departments, and they approve the subsequent recommendations being submitted to your board today. To date, your board has approved 16 cost-saving measures, specifically at the previous November and January meetings. The subcommittees are making substantial progress in their review of the cost-saving suggestions, and they continue to meet and anticipate bringing additional recommendation for your board's approval during this year. Today, 5 subcommittees are presenting 12 recommendations that have the potential to save money and/or could result in productivity enhancements. And again, if you're agreeable, Chairman Mueller will follow the same process utilized previously, whereby each subcommittee will present their recommendations, take questions, and then the board would, if they elect to approve each of the separate subcommittees' recommendations as a group.
Please.
Okay. The first presenter today is the Purchasing Committee, so I'll turn it over to Nancy Applenepp, the chair.
Have you depressed the little button right there in front of you? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. My name is Nancy Applenelp, and I'm from the District Attorney's Office, and I'm chairman of the Purchasing Committee. Our first cost-saving suggestion is to mandate that when used, all 411 information requests, whether office or mobile initiated, be made through a free service. The recommended action is educate workforce using iPlacer, Placer Gold, and other media means and opportunities to use free directory services as much as possible. Require landlines be programmed to dial 411 services, require department IT staff to program cell phones to dial 411 services. And the recommendation for implementation is departments are responsible for ensuring employees with phones are aware of the alternatives. Individual employees are responsible for careful use of resources entrusted to them, and the cost savings task force is responsible for advertising alternatives. That's our first one, and then our second one is cost-saving suggestion is to analyze cell phone bills to obtain the optimal plan for the department. The basis departments have cell phone plans that sometimes do not meet the needs of staff in the most cost-effective way. Some plans will regularly exceed their minutes, while other plans come close to using the monthly allotment of minutes. Some plans allow consolidation and rollover of unused minutes, while others do not. And the recommendation for implementation is departments should continually review cell phone bills to determine whether the minute plans are appropriate for their use and provide the most cost-effective plan that meets their needs. And our third item is cost-saving suggestion. Consolidate cell phone accounts to save money. And the recommendation is departments should consolidate cell phone plans to fewer vendors when possible, cheaper, desirable, and where county services are neglectedly impacted. And then our last one is identify and provide a cell phone guru to help with their cell phone issues. And the recommendation for action is identify cell phone guru in the telecom division of administrative services, and the guru should have as a technical resource for departments, not as a single point of contact for all cell phone services, equipment, or contracts. And the recommendation for implementation is Administrative Services Telecommunications Division will identify one or more staff members who will serve as a cell phone expert and who will be able to assist the departments. And that's it for our purchasing committee. And do you have any questions?
Questions of the purchasing committee's recommendations? Seeing none? I'm sorry. Oh, Supervisor.
I did actually have one. Regarding the first, mandating the use of the free 411 services, have we done any sort of analysis of the costs of having to go program landlines and do those other sorts of technical fixes to the system versus expected savings? Look, we probably have. Here's Jerry.
We'll answer that.
Absolutely, Supervisor Montgomery. Jerry Gamis, Administrative Services Department. The county spends about $20,000 a year on 411 services for all of the county offices. So programming the telephone systems throughout the county to dial some of these toll-free services would be very minimal, somewhere in the range of about $2,500 one-time charge, and then there are no ongoing recurring costs for that. So the savings would be substantial.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board members have any other questions? My question is to the concept of the cell phone guru, if you will, and how exactly, I am assuming we are looking at taking somebody that we currently have on staff who is probably already dealing with telecom-related issues and simply saying you are now the point person for working with the departments to help them manage their cell phone expenses down. Is that?
That is correct, Chairman Euler. We are looking at taking an existing allocation, and actually the person is our current cell phone expert, and really expanding her role. Administrative Services is up to the challenge. I think that by hosting regular quarterly meetings with our cell phone providers and the different department IT liaisons, we can educate our workforce to be able to realize some of the savings that the Cost Savings Committee has recommended.
Just, I guess, wanted to emphasize the fact that we're not looking at creating or incurring any new personnel-related cost in this, simply reprioritizing somebody's existing duties, perhaps?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for this subcommittee? I see none, or committee, I should say. And if I may, Anita, are you comfortable with me just moving on to the receiver subcommittee? No, I think what we'll do is we'll just take them right on through and see where we stand. So we'll move on to the receiver subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Thompson with the Receiver Committee. The first suggestion before you is to make sure that all county fees reflect current cost and have been recently reviewed for appropriateness. The recommendation for action is the Receiver Committee supports the action taken by the Placer Administrative Manual Committee, or the PAM, regarding their work on the county fee policy. What the Receiver Committee found was that the Placer Administrative Manual Committee, with the assistance of the Auditor Controller's Office, has developed a county's fees policy, and at the request of CEO, the Auditor's Office prepared a standard fee methodology or guideline for use by the county departments. And it is understood that the county's fee policy will go to the board for approval when the Placer Administrative Manual, or PAM again, is presented to the board. As far as a recommendation for implementation, implementation is in process with the development and approval of the county's fees policy included in the PAM. And then once adopted by the board, the CEO's office and Auditor's Controller's Office will update pertinent policies and procedures to reflect the county's fee policy, and will communicate those changes to the departments and meet to ensure the accurate application of those policies.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead? You had two recommendations, I believe, coming out of your committee.
Yes, sir. Suggestion number 2 would be to place suggestion boxes in visible locations in all county departments and public access areas. And the recommendation for action here is that CEO formally request that Administrative Services develop an electronic suggestion box, and that CEO designate the staff to develop and manage the suggestion box process and ensure that suggestions are reviewed by the appropriate cost savings task force. So the basis for this, the Receiver Committee did have or request that Administrative Services review the possibility of placing electronic suggestion box on the county intranet and access those through iPlacer or via the email process. And they did develop a flow chart showing this. And some of the issues were that the electronic suggestion box will be accessed on the county's intranet and not available for public, but it was found that the public does currently can email suggestions to the county employees and to the board, and that these suggestions could be maintained on a separate database. So the recommendation for implementation here would be to direct Administrative Services to create, review, and test an electronic suggestion box that includes building the database and access, and develop online forms, as well as address any security issues. And then the County Executive Office will manage and develop the suggestion box process to also include an option to submit a hard copy, and that the CEO will designate the staff to ensure the suggestion boxes suggestions are forwarded to the appropriate subcommittee for appropriate cost-saving task force. So with that concludes the presentation by the Receiver Subcommittee, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Questions of the Receiver Subcommittee. Jennifer?
Yeah, I have a question relating to the second suggestion, the suggestion boxes. I want to make sure I understand. You're recommending both an electronic suggestion box and physical?
Yes, and just in case somebody doesn't have access to the internet, they can also submit a hard copy, and that would be forwarded to the appropriate cost-saving task force.
And would these include anonymous suggestions, or would the suggester need to identify themselves? Because I could see some privacy concerns with the electronic piece in that, you know, we all have essentially IP addresses that can be tracked, and there may be some concerns with individuals who might wish to make suggestions that if somehow it could be tracked, they may be hesitant to make suggestions.
Mm-hmm. I think when we were initially looking at it, we came up with the conclusion that we would want to have the address or who made the suggestion, so that if we had any follow-up questions, that we can get in contact with them.
Mm-hmm. So we would not be accepting anonymous suggestions in the suggestion boxes then?
I wouldn't go far as to say that. I think we probably would suggest those or allow those to come in. But we would prefer that they came in with
Of course.
contact.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
And my question is in regard to the review of the current fees. I'm assuming we're talking about not just fees that are charged to the public for service, but also fees that are charged between departments for services, administrative fees that get charged from department to department.
That's a good question. I guess I'm going to have to.
Yeah, actually, the cost-saving suggestion was for just updating our fees, but that same methodology would apply, because I think the idea is to have everybody use the same platform for overhead, for incidental costs, for hours, and that's an excellent idea to extend it to our internal cost charging. Because we do a variation of that anyway but to just simply standardize it, bring it to the board so the board knows how that's prepared, because it is a fundamental piece in a lot of budgets and those charge-outs.
And a sizable piece in a lot of budgets.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions by board members for the receiver subcommittee? I don't see any, so we will go ahead and move on to the automation and information technology subcommittee.
Good morning. My name is Bob Long. I'm the acting chair of the Automation and Information Technology Subcommittee, and I manage your county clinics in the Indigent Care Program. Today, we have two recommendations. The first one is a new process that we're asking departments to employ when purchasing or replacing computer server hardware. We're asking that they approach the IT department and discuss the four options, which I will outline, and that they discuss these options and articulate a plan as part of their purchasing process and attach it to the purchase order request. There's four options that we've outlined. The first one is the standard model where a department would purchase, host, and manage the software within their department. The next three are new options that are being offered. The first one is that the department would contract with the IT department and ask the IT department to physically host the hardware, the software, manage that hardware and software, and maintain security for the box in the IT department. The third option is to contract with the IT department for a virtual server. This is where a department would buy space on a server farm, and the server farm would virtually be segmented to support their software if that software allowed that. And the fourth is to actually contract with an agency or a company outside the county to host the software, both the software and the hardware, and we would participate in that service either via the web or a T1 line, but it would be hosted outside the department. Again, we're not recommending any one of these options in particular. We're simply recommending that the department take a look at these four options and articulate the cost savings in the business process that would relate to one of these options and which one is the most effective. The second recommendation we're bringing before you today is for departments to continue to work with the IT department to review and implement ways to conduct business online. We already do quite a bit of that. We can pay our property taxes online. You can apply for a county job online. You can request a marriage certificate online, or you can go online and find out when your street is going to be plowed during the winter up at Lake Tahoe. We're recommending that departments continue to review their processes and look for ways to conduct business online. We're recommending that the IT department review the county website and the search engines that we currently use, the keywords, to make sure that they're up to date and get you to the appropriate department that you're looking for, and to create a more transparent and friendly county website, possibly using newer and more up-to-date icons that would represent the service that the public is requesting. Do you have any questions? I have experts.
Any questions of the Automation Information Technology Subcommittee? I don't see any, so we will go ahead and move on to Joel and the Organizational Subcommittee.
Thank you, Chairman Euler. Good morning, members of the board. Again, Joel Swift, Deputy Director of Facilities, and I'm serving as the Chair of the Organizational Committee. We have two items as well. We actually have three, but I'm going to combine, for speed, I'll combine the second two. The first item really is for grants, and the suggestion from staff was to create an interdepartmental management-level grant coordination committee. And our committee recommends creating this committee. At this point, we don't have a big picture of how many dollars are involved in grants in the county, and that's part of the challenge. But it is certainly in the millions, if not tens of millions, depending on the year and the types of grants that we pursue. So it's a major factor in the county budget. So this temporary committee, which we see as maybe a one-year commitment, would have representation from various departments, and they would be charged to establish some grant writing policies and procedures, develop some resources for county departments in pursuing and obtaining and managing grants, and establishing this sort of resource that would also provide better metrics on grants so that we could report back to your board as to where we stand with grant, our efforts in obtaining and maintaining grants. Ultimately, that would incorporate the grant rating policy into that procedure manual that we were talking about just earlier. So at this point, that's the recommendation for this item. Our second item, second and third item, which is actually stems from our training efforts at the county, has two pieces. One is to leverage internal county expertise for more training, sort of grow your own, because we have plenty of in-house expertise in a lot of different areas. And second is to improve that training process. And the two of those really lead to a set of recommendations that point towards our organizational development division in the CEO office. And Lori Woods is here from that division today if there are any specific questions regarding that. But they already are the clearinghouse, and we really want to expand their role, leverage what they do, and they conduct a substantial amount of training and coordinate training with departments. The CEO's office also last year put out a survey of all the county departments to identify the different levels of training that we already have and classify them as mandatory, non-mandatory, if you will, voluntary or other related types of training. And our recommendation would be to have organizational development again take the lead with moving that forward, expanding our resources and our outreach, and as the county subject matter expert in training, that they would also recommend improvements to our policies for training. With that, there's the extent of our two items. If there's any questions from your board.
Yes, Jennifer.
Thank you. I had a question regarding the first suggestion, create an interdepartmental manager-level grant coordinating committee. That sounds a little unwieldy to me, given how many moving pieces that would involve. Did you look at essentially putting together a grant guru, someone already on staff, someone already employed by the county who has experience researching, because obviously part of grants is identifying what's out there, not just the writing, but someone who has experience researching and writing, maybe putting a person to that position specifically. My guess is that would be a full-time job for someone here at the county. I mean, based upon just the funding that, say, the city of Roseville got only from the ERA funds, my guess is we could put someone already on staff in that role and then have them liaise with the specific departments to make sure that they got the specific technical support and the specific information necessary to write the grant. It just seems that might be a little bit more effective than trying to pull together a group of people with disparate interests and disparate meeting times. Was that considered?
I would say that was considered. We didn't carry it terribly much farther than consideration. One of the initial issues was where would be the resources for that position. The other consideration, at least initially, is that we do have such a wide variety of types of grants and grant opportunities. Health and Human Services, for instance, they pursue a wide variety of grants that are quite different than what probation or the facility services, my department, or public works might pursue. And what we found is all of these departments are doing this effectively in their manner, using their professional resources internally and using their staffing internally to do that. So there's probably more than one guru already in the county quite easily. Certainly in our Parks division, we have folks who are really good at that. Health and Human Services as well. So the short answer is no, we did not we looked at it preliminarily, but we really didn't carry that much further. That might be something that, as a suggestion, maybe this committee looks at. And we would have to look at the costs for that position and how that would really work out. But, again, that's about as far as we took it.
Yeah, I would recommend taking a second look at that, only because I have friends who are grant writers, and they research everything, and what they do is they just look what's out there, public, private funds, and then they identify groups who they think could use that money.
Right.
And then they work with those groups, whether public or private, to put together an actual proposal. It sounds like to a certain extent we may be duplicating efforts at the county if we have different people in different departments who are already doing this. I would just suggest that we take a second look at that different model.
Let me kind of help a little bit with Joel there, is that every department has very in-depth expertise in their field, and they are very aware of the grants that are out there, and so they pursue those grants that are eligible to that area. I think when hearing some of the clearinghouse issues on this, is that they all need generic information. How big the county is, what's the unemployment factor, stuff that's generic out there that needs to be updated from various sources.
Essentially, every grant has certain boilerplate.
Boilerplate. And then how much overhead do we charge to the grant? Do we charge any to that? Things that are consistent needs and formulations on each one of those grant proposals. And so that was to look to try and coordinate that activity so that not every department had to make those decisions, had to create that information, have that coordinated and shared, because really the experts to know where the funding are and know how to use it so they're not just chasing dollars per se, but they're actually providing meaningful services for the county citizens are in these departments. And so we wanted to make their life easier by having this coordination so they had the same database, they knew what the overhead costs were, so they could go after the monies that, whether it's the sheriff or probation or everybody else, they know where those sources are. To have one person trying to know all those sources and just find money out there, we found through other actions in the past is really not very cost effective for county staff. Let the experts go get the money.
I understand that point, but it actually goes back to my original concern, which is, do we really need a coordinating committee for that in that case, or do we just need one point person who has that generic county-wide information? That's really the piece I'm getting at. Do we really need to put together yet another committee, or is there a person that we can identify as that point person who does work with the folks in the individual departments who have identified and are looking for the grant funding?
Joel, my understanding of your presentation on that point was it's your expectation that this committee would meet for maybe a year if necessary in order to do that kind of that basic work that provides that common framework for all departments to draw from, and that once this committee, this grant writing committee of the folks within the various departments who currently do it, once they have created that template, brought together that common book of knowledge, if you will, you intend to disband that committee. I mean, I think I heard you say you thought the committee would meet for about a year.
That is correct. That is correct. And one scenario might be to task with that committee to look at the validity and the pros and cons of having a permanent position to cover that.
My question for your committee was actually on the other recommendation, and that was, I like the idea of utilizing our own staff to provide training across departments, what have you. Question then would be, I guess, for your committee, do we create opportunities, having identified subject matter experts, employee relations, whatever the training opportunity may be, have we thought about, having done that, then creating opportunities for us, the county, to rent those experts out to other jurisdictions for a fee?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if Lori wants to tackle part of this, but we did look at that. And, in fact, we're doing that to a certain extent. Absolutely, some of the smaller counties, other jurisdictions around us might take advantage of that. And we do actively pursue that already, and that's certainly that possibly could expand. And I will add that right now we do a lot of this training that's recommended in this manner. Andy Sisk, for instance, with the auditor's office, does a lot of the PAS training within different departments. We have a lot of folks on the legal side with county counsel and the district attorney and child support services who have specific requirements for training as attorneys that they can at some level share between departments already and outside of our jurisdiction. But Lori Woods.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. Lori Woods with Organizational Development. And to answer your question, we do provide training to other jurisdictions as needed. We do also receive revenues from them in that effort. I think to provide some more information to the departments and work with them to find out what their department needs are specifically to provide those opportunities for trainers would be a great work for us to do with the committee. And I can see that there are areas that we've already identified, maybe general customer service, ethics training, leadership training, that would be very valuable for our experts to assist the county employees.
Great, thank you very much. And Jennifer?
I'd like to volunteer Chairman Euler, given his theatrical training, for some presentation training at the county level. I think he'd be very effective at that.
Thank you, Supervisor Montgomery. And we'll move on after a dramatic pause. All right. Any other questions to the organizational committee? Seeing none. We'll move on to travel and transportation.
Good morning, Chair Euler, members of the board. My name is Troy Held. I'm your Director of Child Support Services. I'm here before you today as the Chair of the Transportation and Travel Subcommittee. I'm joined by David McManus, who's the Division Manager from the Probation Department, here to my left. I would like to recognize briefly the Transportation and Travel Subcommittee members. They are Lauren Clark from Cedra Planning, Mary Hertigan from CEO's Office, Graham Knaus from Health and Human Service Agency, Allison Carlos from CEO's Office, David Coppin from the District Attorney's Office, and he's also the Vice Chair, Chuck Gordon from Public Works, Automotive Fleet Division, and Lena Hugai from CEO's Office. We have two cost savings items to present today. The first one is to consolidate the use of pool cars among departments. The Travel and Transportation Subcommittee recommends this suggestion for use in multiple county departments that are situated at a similar site or a small campus setting. Common practice for departments within the county is to obtain pool vehicles for department use at large by designated employees at the fleet yard for work purposes. And that requires that they reserve that vehicle, travel to that location, most of the time in their private vehicle, obtain the vehicle, and then use it for the day, travel back to their work site. This suggestion, which has been implemented on a temporary basis to determine whether it's effective, uses mini pools at a certain location. The Domes here is one of those locations. In that circumstance, it spreads the cost of the use of the pool vehicles amongst the participating departments and eliminates the use of personal vehicles by staff to obtain the pool cars because the cars are on site at that location. The vehicles are reserved through a common Outlook calendar so that all can see them, and then email reservations are used to hold the vehicle for use. The use of the mini pools, in conjunction with direction from the Placer County Executive Officer on December 2nd, 2008, could increase the efficiency and reduce costs by saving departments on daily use rates for individual vehicles, save the county on reimbursement costs for personal vehicle use for travel to and from the fleet services yard, and save the county in staff time by providing a shared county vehicle at the work site while eliminating the time needed to reserve and acquire the vehicle. Although this item doesn't have readily quantifiable savings at this time, it does appear to increase productivity, improve efficiency, and in the subcommittee's opinion warrants implementation.
Any questions on this item? Okay, and you had another recommendation, I believe?
Yes. Good morning, Chairman and Board. My name is David McManus from the Probation Department. Another idea that our Travel and Transportation and Travel Subcommittee was asked to look at was the implementation of electronic vehicle tracking via global positioning systems, GPS devices on county vehicles. And through consultation with subject matter expert in fleet services and public works, our subcommittee determined that electronic vehicle tracking did provide some potential unquantified cost savings and improved efficiencies, especially with large equipment and public transit. And this is done via mileage optimization, consolidation of transit routes, minimizing abuse or misuse of equipment, and also, most of these products have a pre-trip inspection that requires the operator of the vehicle to go around to sites and check the safety of the vehicle, therefore enhancing public safety. Another aspect of these devices is that they also enhance enhance liability avoidance by creating accident investigation data if there is an accident, and it also allows the vehicle to be located immediately, to enhance public safety. But because the potential savings were unquantifiable and require capital investment, we wouldn't bring this forth unless an opportunity existed, and there is an opportunity. In fact, last year in April of '09, your board, your honorable board, authorized the Public Works Department to apply for and receive $114,000 in CalEMA funds through a Proposition 1B Transit Bond Act for the purpose of installing these devices on 40 Placer County Transit and Tahoe area regional buses with no cost to the general fund. That program could then be evaluated for further efficiencies to the general fleet, and we could utilize that pilot project at a no-cost pilot project to determine if there's further efficiencies to the general fleet. Therefore, the Transportation and Travel Subcommittee recommends approval and support by this body for this state-funded pilot project, allowing the Department of Public Works to implement an automatic vehicle location system on public transit vehicles, utilizing the grant funds from Prop 1B.
Is this related to the item that we have on our agenda, item F, under Public Works 15, with the utilization of 1B funds, or are those different vehicles? Automatic vehicle locating systems for passenger information is what I see. Is that a separate
item? Yeah,
separate? Okay. Okay. Any other questions on these items as presented by the Travel and Transportation Subcommittee? Jennifer.
Just a clarification. So what you're actually proposing here is installing these GPS systems just in these buses in the public transit at this point?
Yes. And then Fleet Services could evaluate whether there was cost savings through improved efficiencies, less wear and tear, idling, fuel costs from excessive speed and abuse of equipment.
Okay, because I just know there was some concern about were we going to put this in every single county vehicle and the enormous costs that could be associated with that?
It may not be cost effective, and we could determine such at no cost through this project. And that's all we're recommending that the board support at this point.
Thank you.
Yes.
Two comments on the first, the consolidation of use of pool cars among departments. We, about a year and a half ago, my assistant Brian requested that we do this for Kirby Hills, as opposed to the Kirby Hills employee that has to go out, whether it was Linda or Brian or Heidi or whomever, having to figure out how to obtain a car, get it down to Kirby Hills for the utilization. We requested just a permanent parking of a county vehicle down at Kirby Hills, and it's worked out very well for the staff down there. So hopefully it will prove to be equally as effective where it also gets implemented up here. My concern with what we're talking about on the GPS systems is certain aftermarket additions to electronics that come from the original equipment manufacturer are violative of the warranty. And my concern would be installing something that creates an electronics-related issue, we take it into the manufacturer, and the manufacturer looks and says, what's this? We didn't put that on, and therefore your warranty for your electronics is void. So how do we make sure that we don't run afoul of that?
Certainly, we utilize fleet services to make sure that we're not negating any warranties.
Brady, do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
I understand what you're saying, and we will take that back to Fleet Services and make sure they understand that comment.
Because there are certain aftermarket ads, depending on how they are attached, all the rest, that will violate a warranty, and they just kind of, that's all on you. Okay, we have a number, that's, Anita, that concludes all of the different committee, okay. There were a number of questions that were raised on a few of the individual items, and so what I'm going to do is give an opportunity for any board member who might right now wish that we take separate votes on any items to go ahead and make that request. And if I don't see any, then I will entertain a motion to approve all of the recommendations in total as presented. Okay, so motion by Supervisor Holmes, second by Supervisor Wygant to accept the recommendations from the various committees as contained in our staff report. And before we vote, sitting now on the organizational committee and the benefits committee, I know there's a lot of time that staff puts into these. What we see is a very small percentage of the total number of recommendations that these committees receive for cost savings. A lot of work goes into analyzing a number of recommendations that come from all over the county, both employees and public. And I want to thank the various committee members. Troy identified the members of his committee. I'd like to thank all of the committee members that serve on all of these subcommittees that do put in a lot of time giving good, serious consideration to these requests or to these recommendations for cost savings. I want to thank those people that make the recommendations for the cost savings that do ultimately get vetted and end up here at our board. So thank you to those of you that continue to put in your time, especially those of you that act as chairs of these committees. Just the scheduling of those meetings alone is a daunting task. So thank you very much for the commitment that you've made to this effort. And with that, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None? Thank you very much. All right, we'll roll back the clock to our 9 o'clock timed item. We give a moment for these folks to get back to work. Okay, we'll go ahead and pick up our 9 o'clock timed item. This is a presentation of a proclamation declaring March of 2010 as American Red Cross Month in Placer County, and Supervisor Montgomery will make this presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Euler. Thank you, fellow board members. There are a number of folks here from the Red Cross. I'm specifically looking for Heath Wakely and Bob Thornton, and whoever else is from the Red Cross, coming up and identify yourselves before I make this brief presentation.
My name is Linda Eager, and I am the co-DAT team leader with my husband, Bob.
I'm Bob Thornton, Placer District Manager for American Red Cross, and they're being very modest. They are our DAT Disaster Action Team leaders for Placer County. We have about 85 people who respond when there's a single-family fire, and these are the two that are responsible for coordinating all that.
All right. I will read this proclamation, and then we'll get a few photos. I probably won't read this whole proclamation because it's very long. In the matter of a proclamation declaring March 2010 as American Red Cross Month in Placer County. Whereas Americans have had a long history of rising to meet humanitarian challenges, and the American Red Cross is a leader in these efforts, and whereas each year March has become known as Red Cross Month, thereby giving the American Red Cross an opportunity to promote its services and celebrate its successes in serving communities across the United States, whereas the volunteers of the Sacramento Sierra Chapter Placer District responded swiftly to assist with the recent 49 fire in the Auburn area by opening evacuation centers and shelters, along with providing drinks, food, financial aid, and emotional support to those affected by this disaster. And whereas during American Red Cross Month, we honor this dedication and reaffirm the importance of volunteering time and contribution of resources that make our communities and world better. And, to be brief, whereas the Red Cross offers multiple courses such as CPR Saturday, and will actually be teaching nearly 750 students on March 20th, 2010, the life-saving skills of CPR and AED, which I believe is something electronic defibrillation.
Automated external defibrillation.
Thank you. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Placer County Board of Supervisors does hereby declare March 2010 as American Red Cross Month in Placer County, and in doing so, pay tribute to this remarkable organization and all of those who have answered the call to serve a greater cause than self, to offer support and healing in times of need. Thank you. All together.
Wanted to mention that we do have CPR Saturday. It happens to be this Saturday. At William Jessup University in Rockland, we're going to be training up to 780 individuals free because it's been assisted by Oracle Corporation. You're all welcome to go to our website and register. Supervisor Holmes did it a couple years ago. It has expired. Okay, so we hope to see you, and we thank you so much for your support. And the DAT teams have first aid kits vintage first aid kits for the supervisors that we'd like to present.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. First aid kits for all the cuts and scrapes that go along with this job. Lots of ointment and things in there. Some salves for our wounds, I suppose. It's great. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have a 9:05 timed item, a presentation to approve a proclamation declaring April 11th through the 17th of 2010 as National Library Week, presented by a supervisor who went to USC and therefore never spent a minute in the library.
Occasionally we'll go over to the UCLA library, but that's a different story.
Supervisor Wygant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark and Michael are, get there. Yeah, come on up, please. I'll briefly read this and come down and make a presentation, then you two can have the podium if you like. Matter of proclamation declaring April 11th through the 17th, 2010 as National Library Week. Whereas the National Library Week is sponsored by the American Library Association in collaboration with local libraries, and it was established in 1958. Placer County Library System includes 11 branches serving Applegate, Auburn, Colfax, Forest Hill, Granite Bay, Kings Beach, Loomis, Meadow Vista, Penryn, Rockland, and Tahoe City. And the population within the Placer County Library area is 187,184. Whereas Placer Adult Library Services offers an adult literary program through the Placer County Library, whereas National Library Week program supports libraries as centers of learning and literacy, highlighting the impact libraries make on adults and children across the nation. Whereas libraries serve as crucial resources and technology hubs for people in need of wireless internet access, internet workshops, computer training, and assistance in finding jobs during all economic conditions. Whereas the Placer County Library checked out 1.3 million items in the fiscal year 2008 and 9, and has checked out approximately 6 million items over the past 5 years. Whereas soon residents and visitors alike can enjoy the remodeled Colfax Library, due to be open in April 2010, and a brand-new Rockland Library scheduled to be open in November 2010, whereas the Placer County Library received a grant of $7,000 to partially fund the Big Red Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury reading promotion campaign during the month of April 2010, and whereas the Big Read is a program of National Endowment of the Arts designed to revitalize the role of library reading and encourage people of all ages to read for pleasure. Therefore, be proclaimed that the Placer County Board of Supervisors does hereby declare April 11th through the 17th as National Library Week. So thanks, and I just want to, Supervisor Holmes and I are especially ecstatic about the brand-new Rockland Library that will be open soon. Get huge positive reports from our constituents down there. I want to thank you for the efforts, and also the City of Rockland for the collaborative effort that has taken that forward.
I would like to introduce Michael Arton. Michael is a representative from the City of Auburn and is our Library Advisory Board Chair this year. And I want to thank, in particular, our staff, which does such a great job day in and day out keeping our libraries running, our members of the public who use our libraries, and our Friends of the Library support groups. We all get it done together. Thank you.
Michael Otten, and I want to thank you for recognizing our libraries. It's an important function of our community. In fact, they are our community living rooms, and it's amazing to go to each of our libraries, and they all have a different personality and different things going on, and it's not our grandparents' library anymore. It's evolving, much like the times have evolved when the Big Read book, Fahrenheit 451, when it came out. That was during my adolescent phase. I read that. That was science fiction. And it talked about things like wall-sized televisions and little things that you listen to in your ear. You know, yesterday's science fiction is today's reality, and the same is at the library. And I would urge you to, if you haven't read it, to read 451. There'll be plenty of copies available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a series of redevelopment-related items that are timed items. What I want to do is jump forward to department head item number 16 at this point, and let the Sheriff's Department get on about their business. We have a number of folks that were here as part of the presentation this morning. My agenda says that Barbara is to present this, but I see the far less attractive yet equally, I'm sure, intelligent Devin Bell coming forward. So I'm guessing Barbara's not going to be making our presentation.
Yeah, Barbara's in Texas.
Oh,
so
it'd be tough to make a presentation from there.
It'd be a little tough. Okay. Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the board. I want to say thank you for hearing us on this. The Placer County Sheriff's Honor Guard, how about them, huh? They are a tremendous group of deputy sheriffs and sergeants. We have 12 of them. They're dedicated, professional, and passionate, and what is really a calling for them. Their calling is multifaceted, and I'll go into that in just a moment. They've enjoyed a lot of community support. As a matter of fact, the uniforms that you see them wearing were largely donated by community leaders who formed the Placer County Sheriff's Council. We did not spend department dollars on those ceremonial uniforms. Their purpose? Well, they bring an air of dignity and propriety to a variety of events. It's our honor and pleasure to have them represent the office of the sheriff at parades, celebrations, all kinds of celebrations in the community. In addition to department functions, swearing in and award ceremonies, it's also their solemn responsibility, and they take this very seriously, to represent our profession our community and our office at peace officer deaths. Be that an honorably retired peace officer who passes away, we do attend those, or unfortunately, those who were killed in the line of duty and made the ultimate sacrifice in public service. In 1951, the elected sheriff, the high sheriff, William Elam, made this sacrifice when he was killed in a traffic accident in Lake Tahoe area on Dollar Hill while in the line of duty. Since 1991, nearly 19,000 names have been added to the National Peace Officer Memorial. Sadly, Sheriff Elam's name, through oversight, was left off until this year. And I want to give a nod right now to, I think he's still back there, Sergeant Andrew Scott. Sergeant Andrew Scott is kind of an unofficial historian within the department. He maintains our memorial page, and he realized that this long overdue honor was not extended to Sheriff Scott. So he made the appropriate notifications to Washington, D.C., and he was accepted. Sheriff Elam was, and will be inducted this year, May 12th through the 16th. His name will join 7 other Placer County deputy sheriffs' names on that wall. Our request to the board is for you to authorize us to be there. Real simple. Estimated cost for us to attend is $16,000. The department's share of that would be $8,300. As I said, these young men and women are professional and passionate about their calling. They recognize the times that we're in, and they have agreed to raise the other half of the money. They have been working within the community to raise funds. They've had some very generous individuals come forward with hundreds and even $1,000 donations. They're well on their way to earning their half. And what we would request of you is to authorize the out-of-state travel. The $8,300 that the department will pay will cover the expenses for 4 and myself to attend, and the per diem for all. And as I said, they'll raise the other half that will constitute the flights and the housing. We have sufficient funds within our sheriff's training budget to cover the expense of the $8,300. They're raising the other half. We're just asking that you would support us in authorizing the out-of-state travel. That's the end of my presentation. Certainly, if you have any questions, be willing to answer.
Questions by any board members at this point? My question, Devin, is, again, just the dollars that are being requested for the out-of-state travel are currently within the sheriff's 910 budget?
Correct. There would be no expenditure general fund monies. Be within our training budget.
Okay. Well, let's be careful there, because you might find that some of the training budget is 100% of the training budget covered by the special public safety sales tax, or are there not general fund dollars that are within the training budget?
Once they're allocated.
Right. You're not talking about.
I'm not asking for any additional general fund monies.
That was my only cautionary point of clarification.
Yes. No additional monies.
Just a question, should folks want to help with your fundraising effort for this trip or for the Color Guard and what they do, where can folks contact?
There are a couple of ways that that can be done. They could contact the sheriff's office directly and express their desire to support them, and we will make sure that it is routed accordingly. You could also contact the Placer County Sheriff's Council, which is a 501c3, donate to them, and they can route it as appropriate. And there's a link on the Sheriff's Department's website to the Sheriff's Council. So either one of those.
As a designated 501c3, contributions to that entity are tax deductible.
Correct.
As opposed to just sending a check to the Sheriff's Department.
Correct.
So that might be a good route for somebody to go. Yeah. And that is what was the name of the organization again?
The Placer County Sheriff's Council.
Placer County Sheriff's Council.
Right.
Okay.
Just make sure you earmark so that they understand that your intent is to support the honor guard.
Understood. Tom, did you have a question or a comment?
Just for full disclosure, I'm glad that Devin clarified that that is indeed county allocated funds, in part general fund for the budget.
Right.
But those individuals will be paid their regular salary.
Correct.
While they're back there. You said you're covering the per diem costs outside, and that's included within that $6,000. And if there's any coverage that is needed to provide for them by others while they're gone, and because I assume a fairly large number of individuals are going,
correct,
that there should be some overtime costs backing up those individuals.
Correct. It's our desire to send the entire honor guard. It doesn't happen very often, and we'd like them all to be able to attend. Because it is such a large unit, there are 12 of them. They're spread throughout pretty much every division. No single division is getting hit really hard, but yeah, there would be necessary backfill. I think that the total amount of anticipated backfill in worst-case scenario was about $8,000 to backfill.
Okay. Questions or comments by anyone? Jennifer?
Just so I'm clear on that, the staff report that we have from the Sheriff's Office says that salaries and backfill are included in the existing sheriff's budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this dollar amount that we're discussing today would include those costs?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions by any members of the board? Any member of the public wish to address this item? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move approval for out-of-state travel for Under Sheriff Devin Bell and the Honor Guard to travel to Washington, D.C. to attend the National Peace Officers Memorial.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Supervisor Montgomery, second Supervisor Wygant. Any questions or comments? Let's have a roll call, please.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Wygant? Yes. Holmes? Yes. Euler?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go ahead now jump back to our 9:30 timed item, Redevelopment Agency. Mr. LeBeau is here to talk with us as the Board of Supervisors for us to entertain an action that will then lead to us adjourning to convene as Redevelopment Agency. So this is, in fact, the item for us as the board, correct?
Yes, thank you. Jim LeBeau, Redevelopment Agency. There are two very closely related items today regarding the affordable housing scattered sites development in Kings Beach. Because of the requirements of California Community Redevelopment Law, the Board of Supervisors needs to conduct a public hearing and make findings and authorize the disposition of land first, and then the Redevelopment Agency takes its actions for the development agreement and the funding and so forth. So I'm starting with the Board of Supervisors item. However, I was going to make one presentation to cover both items. We are at a milestone here. After many years, the Redevelopment Agency has been attempting to successfully develop affordable housing units in North Tahoe, and today would represent an important step towards achieving that goal for the first time ever. We began this project, the Kings Beach Scattered Sites Housing Project, in 2007, and we've been working diligently ever since in close cooperation with Domus Development LLC, the developer, and many different outside agencies, departments, and community groups. In 2007, we recruited Domus and entered into your board approved an exclusive negotiating rights agreement with them that we would work exclusively with them with the idea of developing this scattered sites housing project. We also entered into a pre-development loan agreement at that time, $1.1 million approximately, to fund the costs of design, permit processing, technical studies, environmental impact studies, and so forth. The project is at 5 separate sites. The Redevelopment Agency now owns all of those sites, and they were acquired in 3 separate installments. Beginning in 2006, we acquired the Brook Avenue parcel, which is vacant. In 2008, we acquired 3 properties that Domus Development had negotiated purchase contracts with, but the redevelopment agency wound up acquiring them. That is the Chipmunk site at Chipmunk and Highway 28, the Fox site at the corner of Fox and Brook, and these parcels here on Deer Street towards the western end of Kings Beach. Just in the last several days, we closed on this property on Trout. Your board approved the purchase agreement for that property just about a month ago. After much effort, as I said, working with the community, working with TRPA and the county, and with a lot of assistance from our planning department and other departments in the county, we were able to successfully achieve environmental review completion and approvals of entitlements for all 5 sites completed by the county in the summer of 2009, and TRPA approved for the first time ever an affordable housing project in Placer County in January. We applied for and were fortunate to successfully be granted funding twice from the state, which has been critical to get us to this point for this project. $3.3 million of infill infrastructure grant from the state and $2.1 million of home funds. Now we are at the point where there's one missing piece of the, with the exception of the actions to be taken today, there's one remaining piece of the financial puzzle to be filled, and that is tax credits financing. Low-income housing tax credits, which are actually private parties pay for a tax deduction on their income tax, and those tax credits are coming from the federal government but managed by the state. So in a few weeks, we will be applying through the developer, Domus Development, for those tax credits financing through the Tax Credit Allocation Committee of California. This is the overall budget for the project. As you can see, a substantial project, $32.6 million. And I will quickly go down the different sources. The first one is the private bank loan. This is a private funding that the developer would pay from the receipt of rent. As you can see, the $1.7 million is not a large percentage of the total cost, and that's because these rents are going to be kept very low. In fact, many of the units are going to be affordable to as low as 30% of area median income. $2.1 million, the home funding I mentioned, the infill infrastructure grant I mentioned, and then the next 3 line items are all contributions from the redevelopment agency. I mentioned that we have acquired those 5 sites. $4.7 million is what we have spent. The pre-development loan, $1.1 million, and the remaining funding needed to fill the gap with the maximum tax credits that we could expect to receive is $2.1 million. That is an action before you today to approve that $2.1 million of redevelopment agency funds. And I should mention those $7.9 million from the redevelopment agency are all North Lake Tahoe project area housing set-aside tax increment funds. They're funds that are specifically designated only for housing in the North Tahoe area. They can't be used for any other purposes, and no general funds are part of this project financing. And then $600,000, a fee that the developer could receive if the project is efficiently run and there are any savings at the end. The developer fee could be increased by as much as $600,000, but if that doesn't happen, the developer does not get that money. So that's a contribution from the developer. And then the tax credit equity, as I said, was the last piece of the financing puzzle. We are at the stage now of applying for those tax credits. To be able to apply for those funds and be competitive to receive them, we understand it's going to be an extremely competitive round. Applications coming from all over California for this financing. We need to have certain actions in place. There needs to be a commitment for the land to be conveyed to the developer at the time that all the conditions are met, the permits are in place, the financing is ready to go, and everything is prepared to start construction, as well as a commitment for the financing, which is part of the actions that the redevelopment agency is asked to take today. I'm going to quickly go through the 5 sites. I'm sorry, going back. This is the existing property that we own. We're the proud owners of these 20 units on Deer Street, and we'd like to get rid of them as soon as possible, because this is the kind of housing that we're trying to replace in North Tahoe. This was a former motel, probably built in the 50s. As you can see, it's not kept in top ship-shape condition in terms of looks. This is how we received it, and we've kept it, met all the health and safety conditions, but have not done a whole lot else. Very small units. There are families living in these units. So this project, what we're really trying to accomplish here, our main goals is to replace substandard existing housing with good, decent, not overcrowded new housing. This is the new project, multi-story, 2 buildings. Actually, it's moving by itself. Three buildings, and with all of the improvements and the up-to-date amenities, landscaping, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, drainage controls, environmental controls, playground and laundry. This is the Trout Avenue site. It's vacant. This is what's being proposed. 1 new building, 5 units, on-site laundry and play area. Fox Street, originally built as vacation cabins. As you can see, they're very small. We're going to replace those, take those down, and build 12 new units in 2 buildings. Brook Avenue, a small site, currently vacant, going to be 2 new units. And in all these cases, what we're winding up doing is having a more efficient, compact building footprints, and actually winding up with more landscaping, less coverage, which is all favorable in TRPA land. This is the Chipmunk site. This is the largest structure, 3 stories over, partially submerged parking in the front building. There's a smaller building in the back, total of 40 units. You can see this is the front building, parking behind, and the smaller building behind. And this is all going to be preserved. It's a slope with all trees. This is an important feature of the project. We're actually going to be capturing drainage from the entire slope of the mountain above this project, and filtering out something like 8 tons of sediment every year that currently is going into the lake and polluting the lake. The schedule. Today, the DDA is before you, as I said, on March 25th, the tax credit application. We would find out in early June if we are awarded those funds. If we are awarded those funds, we intend to aggressively move forward and actually start construction this summer. We would relocate all of the existing tenants with all of the assistance that they are eligible to receive by law, which is not, we expect to be a significant expense to us, but it's in the budget. We would close with all the financing, receive building permits, begin construction by August if we're efficient and fortunate, and then by October. This is the challenge in Tahoe. You can't be digging in the ground after October 15th, so we need to do all the earthwork by October 15th, and then otherwise you have to stop and wait till spring. And we're planning for construction to be complete by August of 2012. The actions before the Board of Supervisors today are to conduct a public hearing and approve findings of benefit, and also a 33433 report and reuse appraisal. What this is redevelopment law requires that for a redevelopment agency to convey land to a private party without a public bidding process, such as being proposed here with the DDA, the Board of Supervisors must first approve that after making the findings and having a public hearing. And the report that we prepared was by Kaiser Marston Associates, our financial consultants who helped us in the negotiations and the review of the financing plan between us and the developer. And then, as I said, those are the actions. These are the actions by the redevelopment agency, which you'll be hearing about in just a moment. I do want to point out that we have here today Joanne Auerbach, our housing coordinator, Kathy Donovan, who's the project manager on this project. Both of them have spent the last 3 years a tremendous amount of effort working with the community and working with TRPA. Not an easy task getting everything approved to this point. Mia Kong here of Domus Development is the principal we've been working with. I want to thank her for all of her dedication to this project. She's coming from San Francisco today, and she has made dozens of trips back and forth up to Tahoe, done a wonderful job working with the community, and even though we were told at the beginning that we're going to not receive the community's support for this project, in the end we proved them wrong and received a resounding support at TRPA and the county to get the approvals for the entitlements. So that concludes my report.
Questions by board members? My question is the number of units that are going to be destroyed and then the number of units that will be replaced all in when this is done?
I believe the existing number of units is 35. And the new total will be 77, 2 of which will be managers' units, and the other 75 will be restricted to rent levels affordable to between 30% and 60% of area median income. I need to point out that the DDA has a little bit different numbers in it because we are not, without an Article 34 ballot measure, we're not allowed to have more than 50% of the net new units be restricted to as low as 80% or below. So the DDA only requires 49% of the net new units be restricted to the lower level. The developer is proposing, and the tax credit financing would require that all 75 of the units be at the lower levels, but we're not making that a requirement of the DDA.
Okay. Supervisor Wygant?
First of all, Jim, congratulations. I want to thank staff for all the work that's gone into this and economic development up in our tourist-based portion of the county. There is no bigger challenge than dealing with affordable housing to have a workforce readily available to help stimulate that economy. But it's something that would be useful for me, and it's probably in all of this information, but if sometime probably later you could capsulize and send to me the diminishment in the coverage for TRPA calculations, that would be, I think, something that would be good for me to have in my head. Thanks.
And Supervisor Montgomery?
Jim, I wanted to thank you and the RDA staff for all the work you've done in this. We were very surprised, actually, at our TRPA meeting. We only had one comment in opposition to the project, which is just about unheard of at the TRPA, and that is largely to do with the outreach that Mia and her organization did in conjunction with Placer County, multiple meetings, multiple outreach to the communities, both in English and in Spanish. We do have a large Spanish-speaking population up there. One of the things I wanted to comment on the replacement numbers is these units, unlike the ones that a lot of people are living in now, are going to be limited to the number of people who can live in them. So while we're seeing a fairly substantial increase in number of units, we are probably not going to see a proportionate increase in numbers of people who are actually living in the area. Because right now you have 6 or 7 people living in single old motel rooms. They will not be allowed, 6 or 7 people will not be allowed to live in one unit in this situation. So there was some concern at the community level about this increased number of units, but I just wanted to make clear that there is not a proportional increase in number of people who are going to be living in these units. But really, I just wanted to say thank you for such hard and great and long efforts put toward this, and I am just so excited that this will, I hope, be the final cap on this process. So thank you.
I believe Ms. Kong also wanted to have a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and open the public hearing, and we'll take the comments under the public hearing. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Anybody who wishes to address the board under the public hearing, please step forward and do so.
Good morning. I'm Mia Kong, and I'm president of Domus Development. For the last 3 years, we have been Sisyphus pushing a big boulder up a mountain, and I think at this point in time, we've actually reached the apex of the mountain, and now we're heading back down. And we're very excited to be a part of this team. I think Placer County has shown exceptional leadership, exceptional skill in navigating, I would probably call it the landmine of entitlement process, to kind of allow us to move through the way that we've done it. This is history in the making for Lake Tahoe. It would be the first infill project, smart growth. It's bringing housing near goods and services. It's walkable. It's near transit. It's going to have a ripple effect from both an economic standpoint as well as quality of life and retention of stormwater, which is critical to Lake Clarity. We found in all of our research that so many folks have to live out in Reno or elsewhere and drive into Lake Tahoe, and we're actually now going to have housing near jobs, so people don't have to get in their cars. They're going to have choices. So it's quite exciting. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with the county, and I just wanted to thank both the Redevelopment Agency as well as the Board of Supervisors for supporting us and continuing to believe that this can happen. We are faced with the most, I would say, competitive round of tax credits ever in the history of California. We're doing everything that we can to try to win these tax credits. They are very, very competitive. We've put forth an incredibly aggressive schedule, one that would make people's heads spin for the complication that it will entail, but we feel confident that we've got the right team in place to pull this off, and if everything works and falls into place, we hope to be in construction by summer. Thank you. And I'm here for any questions.
Anyone else wish to address the board under the public hearing on this item? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public hearing, bring it back to the board. Does council have any recommendations in terms of the motion, references for inclusion? I know that we have a number of different things. We have both a resolution to approve findings and a report and reuse appraisal. We have approval of the redevelopment agency disposition of various properties. So
motion to approve everything you just listed would be fine.
Do we need to take it in two pieces?
I think we can probably take it as one.
Okay. Move approval of item 3, redevelopment agency, adopt a resolution to approve findings and a report and reuse appraisal pursuant to California Health and Safety Code section 33433. Also, approve the redevelopment agency disposition to Kings Beach Housing Associates LP of property located at 325, 348, and 385 Deer Street, 200 Chipmunk Street, 265 Fox Street, assessor parcel numbers 090-122-035, 090-122-036, and 090-122-037 on Trout Avenue and Brook Avenue lots 17, 18 in Kings Beach for the Kings Beach Scattered Sites Housing Project.
Second. Do you need the motion read back? All right, we have a motion, Supervisor Montgomery, and a second by Supervisor Holmes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. We will go ahead and adjourn as the Placer County Board of Supervisors, reconvene as the Placer County Redevelopment Agency Board. I'm going to assume that your staff presentation is exactly what you just gave us, and so if there are no additional questions of, yes, right. If there are no additional questions of staff on the presentation, we have a new public hearing. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing as the Redevelopment Agency. Any members of the public wish to address the board? We'll close the public hearing as the Redevelopment Agency, and Chair will entertain a motion.
Move we, sorry, I just turned myself off. Move approval and adopt a resolution, let me get this right. Pursuant to California Health and Safety Code sections 33431 and 33433, we adopt a resolution to consider a 33433 report and reuse appraisal, disposition of real property as described in the previous action, a disposition, development, and loan agreement and related documents with Kings Beach Housing Associates LP, an amendment to the pre-development loan agreement with Domus Development LLC, authorization for expenditure of $2,100,000 in North Lake Tahoe Redevelopment Project Area Housing Set-Aside Funds, and authorization for the redevelopment director or his designee to execute the aforementioned agreements and documents.
Motion Supervisor Montgomery, second by Supervisor Holmes. Questions on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Okay, that takes care of the Tahoe-related redevelopment agency
Thank you very much.
stuff. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move on to the Sunset Traffic Fee Benefit District item.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
This is now moving to the Sunset Industrial Area redevelopment project area.
And just for clarification, we are still meeting as the redevelopment agency right now.
Thank you. Your board in the past approved a commitment of $6 million to help pay for the transportation program in the Sunset Industrial Area for needed infrastructure improvements related to transportation. And in addition to improving the infrastructure, the first project is just completed this week, the Sunset Interchange at Highway 65. Your redevelopment agency contributed $2.5 million to that project, helped make it possible. But in addition to actually the improvements, it has reduced development impact fees for private parties who want to do development in that area because of our redevelopment agency contribution. Another project is being proposed to be added to the transportation program in the area. It is a overcrossing of the railroad tracks at Athens Avenue, and the first step in that project is to do a study and preliminary design. $1 million allocation is being proposed. There are companion items later today being put forward by Public Works to do your Board of Supervisors side of those actions. The action before you today is to approve the redevelopment agency funding for that allocation and enter into an agreement with the county for the Sunset Traffic Fee Benefit District to increase our total commitment from $6 million to $7 million.
Okay, Supervisor Wagon.
Brief comment, if I could, in that Sunset Industrial Area is in my district and a critical component of, I think, county's economic development plan. So just a brief history, if I could. County adopted the Sunset Industrial Plan, I believe, in 1997 for the whole Sunset Industrial Area. Included in it is a strategy to help try to create jobs out there by both expanding, helping existing businesses expand, and helping to attract new businesses to that area. Clearly, we have the burden of existing in the state of California, which has a reputation of not being the most business-friendly climate, and it's expensive to do business here. So we have, as a part of the strategy, a commitment to try to make sure that we create value to the fullest extent possible as it relates to county policy. So we have a tremendous improvements program for transportation out there, but it's expensive. So the redevelopment agency that exists out there is assisting businesses to encourage them to create new jobs by helping those fees be somewhat less than what they would be otherwise, but at the same time still provide a tremendous circulation program over time. So I just kind of want to refresh everybody's memory in that regard and thank Jim again for the work that's gone forward here. And the more success we have in the Sunset Industrial Area, the greater the revenues will go to the redevelopment agency, and that whole thing can be perpetuated. So I thought it was a timely, with the Sunset Interchange opening up that area more, time to emphasize the work that we've done so far.
Great, thank you, Robert. Any other comments by members of the board? Any member of the public wish to address the board on this item? Okay, do we have a motion?
Approval of staff recommendation. Second.
Motion Supervisor Wygant, second Supervisor Holmes to approve item number 5, staff recommendation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you very much. We
Thank
will
you.
adjourn as the Placer County, thank you, Jim, for your work. Adjourn as Placer County Redevelopment Agency Board, reconvene as Placer County Board of Supervisors. Our 9:45 and 9:50 items are both relatively quick items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He says it's both a comment and a question.
Will Dickinson, Deputy Director of Facility Services. At this time, we're recommending that you hold a public hearing to consider annexation of 2.5 acres on Bedell Court near Vineyard Road in Roseville into CSA 173 for the purpose of providing sewer service. Property is owned by Louis E. Jones Jr. and Mary M. Jones. Staff supports this annexation request and recommends that your board adopt the attached resolution to allow the annexation to proceed. There are no fees owed for this annexation. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions by any board members? Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
We have a motion, Supervisor Montgomery, second by Supervisor Wygant, with Supervisor Holmes temporarily absent. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the presentation and the brevity. Mr. Schneider.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Euler and members of the board. Dave Snyder, Director of Economic Development. This morning, we're asking you to conduct a public hearing and approve a resolution accepting as complete the Economic Development Planning and Technical Assistance Study for the Placer County Economic Development Roadmap. You all have a copy of the roadmap in your packet today, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'd urge you all to approve the resolution before you today.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing to consider adoption of a resolution accepting as complete the Economic Development Planning and Technical Assistance Study for the Placer County Economic Development Board Roadmap. Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move we accept or approve the resolution accepting as complete the Economic Development Planning and Technical Assistance Study.
Motion Montgomery, second Wygant, and Supervisor Holmes temporarily absent. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our 10 o'clock timed item. This is a CEDRA item regarding a rezone of Bunch Creek Timberland Production Zone property.
Morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board. Lauren Clark with the Planning Department. To my right, Crystal Jacobson, who will be presenting the majority of the item. We're returning to the board to discuss a rezone application that affects 598 acres known as Bunch Creek in the Weimar area, right adjacent to the North Fork American River Canyon. The initial application was for immediate cancellation of the Timberland Production Zone District and changed the property to a residential forest zone district with an 80-acre minimum. This item was continued from the Board of Supervisors hearing of June 24, 2008, directing staff to evaluate a number of issues related to the Timberland Production Zone, including some policy issues related to caretaker versus housing permitted as a matter of right, as well as an evaluation of minimum lot size standards, and also to consider the 10-year rollout provisions of that particular zone district, which is unique in that it does have a very specific relationship to state law, both here and elsewhere throughout the state of California. So with that, we'll go ahead and provide the board with the information that you requested back in June of 2008, as well as some additional information as to the status of the application. And I do know that the applicant is here and they have additional testimony as well. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Crystal Jacobson with the Placer County Planning Department. As Lauren noted, this project before you today is the Bunch Creek rezone. And I'm going to give you a little bit more detailed background than Lauren gave. In June of 2008, your board did consider a request from the applicant for an immediate rezone and conversion of the 598-acre Bunch Creek property from TPZ to the residential forest, combining an 80-acre minimum lot size. Where's that? Hold on a second here. Uh-oh. Oop, there we go.
your board at that, this is a vicinity map actually of the project site. It is located to the south of I-80 and then to the north of the North Fork American River Canyon, and it's just south of Colfax on off of Yankee Gyms Road. At the June 2008 hearing, your board adopted a motion to continue the project, as Lauren noted. It specifically directed staff to work with the applicants on the potential for a 10-year rollout of the property, and then also to research the state's requirements regarding whether or not residences are allowed by right within the TPZ district, and then whether or not the state mandates the lot size requirements for parcels within these areas. Since that hearing, we have worked with the applicants and conducted further research on TPZ statutes. And then in addition to that, the applicants have modified their project description to include an option for a 10-year rollout, rezoning of the TPZ, and they have also undergone further CEQA review for the modified project. This is a zoning map of the project site. As I note, it is all TPZ. It's in the red areas of the project site, and then there are other TPZ parcels to the northeast and to the south. So let's see if I can, this area here is TPZ, and this area here is TPZ. So the modified project description includes a request from Jack Remington on behalf of Fred Basquin and Judd Parker, the parcel owners, for either an immediate rezoning, as we came to you in June of 2008, for the conversion of the TPZ property to residential forest combining an 80-acre minimum, or the 10-year rollout, so it's an either-or option. And then, in addition, the request also includes a modification to a previously approved minor land division, which created 3 parcels on the TPZ site. The purpose of that parcel map modification would be to provide an agricultural buffer. It's a 100-foot setback adjacent to the TPZ parcels to in the northeast here and to the south. Here's a rezoning exhibit from the applicant, and here's an aerial. You can see the river is right over here on the south side. So as directed by your board at the June 2008 hearing, I want to provide some further information on the TPZ statutes. Residential uses are identified as compatible uses under TPZ and are allowed within the TPZ areas in the state. However, that regulation is left to the local jurisdiction. The state statutes do not distinguish between single-family residential dwellings or caretaker and employee housing. And then with respect to the lot sizes are established at a minimum of 160 acres for TPZ parcels. However, there is a section 1119.5 states that the parcels may be divided into smaller lot sizes if the original owner prepares a joint timber management plan prepared or approved by a registered professional forester for the parcels being created, and then that plan provided for the management and harvesting of timber, and then it's recorded at the county recorder's office and de-restricted on the newly created parcels. Our county code regulates TPZ zone districts and requires 160-acre minimum lot size for TPZ parcels in the county. And then single-family residences are not allowed within the TPZ zone district. However, caretaker and employee housing is an allowed use in TPZ with the approval of a minor use permit, and it's also subject to Section 1756.090 of the zoning ordinance, which states that caretaker housing shall be allowed only where the principal commercial, industrial, institutional, agricultural, or lumbering use of the site involves operations, equipment, or other resources that require 24-hour oversight. It has been a county's policy to require a forest management plan for a project where the applicant is requesting a minor use permit to allow for a caretaker residence on the property. And then I also would like to note that with respect to those caretaker residences, the county does not regulate the scale or the size of those units. So if they were approved, they can have the appearance of a single-family home, and many of them do, and then they can also be owner-occupied. Staff has also conducted further research, done a comparison of other jurisdictional regulations for TPZ. 27 counties that contain TPZ areas were selected for this comparison. The results noted that minimum lot sizes varied from 40 to 160 acre minimum, and the majority of the counties, 59%, require 160 acre minimum lot size. The results also noted that the majority of the counties allow for residential units, that would be 74% of them. However, of those that allow for the units, 30% require planning department review, so some sort of administrative review permit, minor use permit, and timber management plans. And then the remaining 26% of the counties allow for caretaker and employee housing, similar to what Placer County allows. With respect to the 10-year rollout, TPZ owners may elect in any given year to rezone a parcel from its current TPZ zone district to an alternate zone district through a 10-year rollout process. That process is regulated by the California Public Resources Code, sections 51120 and 51121 of the TPZ Act. This process does require approval by the county of a rezoning to an alternate zone district, and then if approved, that new zone district would become effective 10 years after the date of the approval. It does not require the State Board of Forestry approval. However, you do have to file an application for the 10-year rollout process. The TPZ immediate rezoning conversion is very different from that in that it requires the approval of the State California Board of Forestry, and it also requires the local jurisdiction to make certain findings in order to recommend approval of the rezoning to the state. This is found in California Public Resources Code sections 4621 through 4628, and you do have a copy of those findings. They're on page 52 of your board packet. So to conclude, and with respect to the county's current TPZ regulations, staff has determined that a modification to allow for single-family residences within the TP zone district is not necessary, given that we do allow for caretaker residences with the approval of a use permit, and because the size and scale of those residences are not regulated. And then with respect to the modified project, staff has determined that a 10-year rollout rezoning to residential forest could potentially be supported with a modified minimum lot size. The applicant is asking for 80-acre minimum. It is staff's determination that we could potentially support a lot size of 160-acre minimum, given that it would provide for a higher level of land use compatibility with these surrounding TPZ properties and uses, and would therefore be a more appropriate lot size for the site. So with that, staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors take the following actions. One would be to direct staff to present this modified project, which includes the option for the 10-year rollout, rezoning of the TPZ site, and then also the modified parcel map, present it before the Agricultural Commission, the Weimar-Applegate-Colfax Municipal Advisory Council, and the Planning Commission for further consideration, and then to return to the Board of Supervisors with the Planning Commission's recommendation on the modified project and with the mitigated negative declaration that has been prepared for the project. The second action would be that should your board desire to allow single-family residences within the TPZ district, direct staff to bring forward a zoning text amendment to section 1716.010 of the Placer County zoning ordinance to allow those uses within the TPZ district. And I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, before questions, council has a comment.
I just want to confirm that there is no decision before the board today to vote on any rezoning, any request. It's just direction to staff to proceed further back to the Planning Commission, the Ag Commission, et cetera. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the 10-year rollout, it's still a proposal that would require a discretionary action of the board to grant the ultimate rezoning. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's not a right of any landowner to get a rezoning, correct?
No. Okay, with that clarification, questions by staff of board members? Jennifer?
I wanted to follow up on something that Tony just raised, so I'm perfectly clear on it, as it is the audience and anyone who may be listening at home. Unlike the Williamson Act, where the property owner can initiate the actual change in their status, TPZ is subject to a board decision.
Correct.
Okay. There is, I've spent a lot of time looking at this, a lot of time. When I was home ill, I spent a lot of time on the internet. the TPZ zoning, from what I can understand, and I'm just looking for a confirmation on this, when Placer County, so many years ago, chose to regulate the TPZ zoning, my understanding, looking back at their policy, is that they did so for a number of reasons, mainly because the TPZ zoning allows economical timber uses in the county by creating a lower property tax cost associated with the TPZ parcel. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. The purpose was really to set aside to maintain the timber resources for the state.
Okay, yeah, and it seemed like there were a couple pieces in that. It seemed as if there was an intention to set aside the timber resources on a kind of ecosystem scale, much like we're doing with the PCCP in the western end of the county. But it also seemed as if the board then very clearly saw that this was a way to make the economics of timber production work for a forester or a timber farmer.
Certainly.
Okay. Has Placer County done many of these rezones in the past, and if so, can you identify any of them?
It's my understanding that there has been one rezone, and it was a rollout rezone in the Forest Hill location, and that is the only one that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any immediate rezonings. I certainly haven't been here as long as Lauren, so Lauren might be able to chime in here.
With no reference to my age.
Sorry. I didn't.
Or how long I've been here. I do know that one application was split over two applications. I believe it was processed on two separate occasions, but at least to my knowledge and my experience, that is the only one that I recall as well. And certainly there might be others, but it has not been a substantive change like we have seen with the Williamson Act program in the western part of the county.
And the one in Forest Hill, if I'm correct, is commonly known as, what's currently commonly known as the Forest Ranch proposal. That's the property we're talking about?
Yeah, at the time it was Pomfret Estates, more commonly known today as Forest Ranch.
Okay. I'm sorry, there's so much information is rattling around in my head, it's a little bit hard for me to identify some specific questions that I think are important to answer. On the immediate conversion, we would need to make the findings today that those were supportable, correct?
Correct. There are very specific findings, and I will note, too, when it went to the Planning Commission prior to the June 2008 board hearing, it was the Planning Commission's determination that they could not make those findings, and so they actually recommended to your board denial on the immediate rezone because they couldn't make those findings. So, yeah, they're very specific. For the 10-year rollout, those findings aren't necessary.
Okay, so if we were unable to make the findings on the immediate conversion, it is not mandatory that we make those same findings for a 10-year rollout. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like actually to ask Scott Finley to come up and explain a little bit more the issue with how this process would work, because I think it was a little bit unclear, even with Tony's comments on what.
I'm so sorry. Are there any other questions for Crystal at this point? I do have two questions.
Okay.
On my microphone, that'd be helpful. And then Scott will let you do the process-related things. While it's kind of fresh, you made two comments that I have questions about. You commented that the purpose of the TPZ zone is to maintain timber resources for the state. Mm-hmm. Do we know how many board feet have been harvested off of this site in the last 20, 30 years? Has there been active timber harvesting on this site?
I am unaware of that answer. However, I do know the applicants are here, and I'm sure that they would be able to answer that.
Okay. How about in the Weimar Colfax area in general? Do we see a lot of active timber harvesting in that area right now in general?
I know of one active timber harvesting operation, and it's actually adjacent to this site. It's this site right up here.
Okay.
And yes, they actively harvest and farm.
And to that point, could you jump back to the map that you had that shows the surrounding zonings? Because that was what my other question was on. That one, okay, that one will do. Looking at Exhibit A, page 49 of my staff report, you'd made the comment that staff would support the 160-acre parcels because it's compatible with the surrounding TPZ zoning. However, as I'm looking at this, I see one piece of property bordering this particular property that has that TPZ zoning. I see innumerable properties that go anywhere from 4.6 acres up to 80 acres. I see a number of 20 acres. Other than that one parcel to the north that you just identified where there's active logging, I don't see, unless that parcel to the south, which I can't readily identify on my map. We do have one TPZ down there on that south corner. But I'm looking at 5-acre minimums, 4.6s, 20s, 80s, all around this project. And so I'm curious as to the emphasis on the compatibility with the one parcel as opposed to the recognition of the substantial subdivision that's actually taken place in this area, including a number of smaller parcels immediately adjacent to where the active logging is taking place.
Yeah, you're correct in saying that there are certainly some smaller zone districts or lot sizes with zone districts with smaller lot sizes on the surrounding parcels. I will note that this parcel right here is also TPZ. So these two areas right here are TPZ. So by rezoning this, you would essentially be taking...
I'm sorry, where? Okay, but yes, they are, but TPZ with a 40-acre and an 80-acre. So they are
right.
TPZ, but in terms of the issue of the compatibility of the surrounding lot sizes, the vast majority of what is adjacent to this is smaller and in some cases substantially smaller than the 80 acres that they're requesting.
Correct. You are correct in that statement. The TPZ is 160, and so staff felt that given the converting it from TPZ into residential uses, because of its proximity to the existing TPZ operations. And this, I'll note right here that while this one here is a active timber operation, they actually access their site through this property, through the Bunch Creek property. And there's logging trucks that frequently go through that site. So it was staff's determination that a more compatible lot size would be the 160. But you are right in that there are smaller lot size requirements surrounding the site.
Mr. Finley, if you... Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Holmes. I apologize.
Looking at the staff report on page 55, it says that there was a timber harvest plan in 1994, and the property was harvested over the 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe, I don't have that in front of me, but yes, I have read that plan.
And then getting back to the property tax, although the property tax is low in the timber production zone, the harvesting of the timber produces a tax. Is that correct?
Correct.
Which is more revenue, augments revenue. The state of California goes to the state of California. And
correct.
I think some of that has come distributed to the county. Okay, just want to point that out.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions of Crystal at this point? If not, Mr. Finley? I'm sorry, Jennifer now has a question.
For Crystal, sorry. On the TPZ properties that are less, excuse me, the smaller size TPZ properties that are less than 160 acres, if I'm correct, that's kind of a historical holdover because initially the TPZ, the state laws allowed for less than 160, but currently they do not.
Correct.
And currently Placer County Code does not support less than 160?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Crystal at this point? All right. I think you can safely wander away. Mr. Finley.
Thank you. Scott Finley, Deputy County Counsel. Very briefly responding to Supervisor Montgomery's question. When this item first came to this board in June of 2008, it came up for an action item. And at that meeting, the board referred it back to staff for further study. And so it's being brought back in response to that previous direction. Since June of 2008, the applicant came in and actually modified their application to change their application so that it no longer is simply for an immediate rollout. It's for an immediate rollout or, in the alternative, approval of a 10-year rollout. Under both the government code and the Placer County ordinances, that changed project, that modified project, needs to be evaluated by the Planning Commission before it can be considered by this board. So that's why, under the state law and county ordinance, this project needs to go back to the Planning Commission for a recommendation before it would come back to this board for final action at this point. So that's the process we're in today. So the next step, as staff requested, would be to send it back to the Planning Commission for further review, and then their recommendation on the full modified project would come back to your board.
And for clarification, part of going back to the Planning Commission would involve going back to the MAC and the Agricultural Commission, is that correct?
Correct. That's part of the process, going back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
And then, if it does go through that process, and does it come back to us for final approval?
It would come back to this board then for final approval as a complete package, so the whole item would come back to you at one time.
Hear from the applicants at this point. Mr. Remington.
Thank you. It's a very interesting project. I'm getting a little bit tired of it. No disrespect for the property owners. I think we've gone around in more circles than I've seen in my 46 years here. I'd like to just make one statement for the beginning, and that is that a combined, I got to make sure what I wrote here, an immediate out requires a substantial finding, but it applies to ground that has timber on it. This ground has no timber on it. It's gone. It's been logged. It was a salvage logging after the fire, and the present owners have been doing additional work to remove snags and keeping the fire roads open and so on. But there is no marketable timber on this site. And that's why when we started it, we asked for an immediate out, because if there was timber there, like Forest Ranch, that was a fully timbered site. Whole different situation. I would never come before the board for an immediate out on something that was timberland. It is not timberland. So I have a lot of other comments to make, but I think in light of what's been said, that you're not going to be able to make a motion to approve or deny tonight or this afternoon. We might just as well proceed with the decision we have to make today. I would request that we try to schedule the WAC-MAC and the Ag Commission and the Planning Commission on as combined a schedule as we can, because again, it's been a year and a half to get back to you today on this issue, and I don't want to take another year and a half to get back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, we'll go ahead and open this up for comments from members of the public, understanding that the board is not in a position to take action on this. We will not be actually discussing a motion for action other than simply referring back to MAC, Ag Commission, and the Planning Commission.
Well, good morning. I'm Alan Edwards. My family and I live and farm in Colfax, just southeast of Colfax, on TPZ land that we've owned since 1946. We're the TPZ land that's just north and east of that property. And I'm here to urge you to deny this request for rezoning. And there's really three countywide issues that I think are in play here. The first issue is one of property rights. The property rights of forest landowners in this state have been under assault for decades. In 1977, this county, in part to provide protection to forest land, established timber preserve zoning, which gives a specific set of rights to TPZ property owners. Now the applicants are asking that the county change their zoning, essentially giving them an additional set of property rights so they can develop the land for housing. But doing that, we know from experience, my family knows from experience, would cause conflicts, putting our long-standing business at risk, and it would diminish our property rights. So the question is, should the board expand the property rights of one owner at the expense of another owner? I don't think you should. Second, I believe that the TPZ zone districts, in a sense, serve as a model for the set-aside areas in the proposed West County PCCP. The zone districts were established to protect working forests from real estate development. The viability of the TPZ concept depends on the county keeping the zone districts intact. For the system to work, you, the supervisors, need to honor the county's original intent. The same holds true for the set-aside land in the PCCP areas. If you decide that TPZ, how you decide on TPZ rezoning will be a signal, a very strong signal, on how well you'll honor the conservation plan set-aside agreements down in the West County. Finally, your decision on this TPZ zoning request sets a precedence for our specific zone district and the county as a whole. The proposed rezoning is in conflict with your general plan, the forest policy, and other policies of the general plan. Approving this proposal would in effect be an ad hoc change in policy with implications for all the county's TPZ land, some 112,000 acres. And please don't believe that a 10-year rollout is going to reduce the impacts. The rollout really has the same effects as an immediate conversion, it just delays it. If you question the county's current forest policies, then look at them in a deliberate way with broad public impact, not an ad hoc approach. Again, I strongly urge you to deny this rezoning request, and my understanding is you do have that authority today. Also, if you're, Mr. Supervisor, you had asked the question about the total amount of timber that had been harvested over time on that property, and on my property you have that as well. My family was once in partnership on that land, so I do have some history. I can give that to you now if you want. I've gone over my time, but the best of my knowledge, since 1946, when our family and the other family bought that land, until the mid-90s, when we were no longer owners, the land had been partitioned, but I certainly was associated with it. There was, on that land, there was, actually on both parcels, there was somewhere between 3 and 3.5 million acres on each parcel harvested over that.
You mean board feet?
3 million board feet. I'm sorry. Did I say acre feet?
Yeah.
Well, I'm dealing with other issues that have acre feet. 3 and 3.5 million acre feet on each parcel.
Board feet.
Board feet. I'm sorry. So it's, you know, the land started as cut over railroad and homestead land, and so it didn't have full stocking, particularly on our part, which my family managed from the start. We've gotten it pretty well to full production. But on the land in question, the proposed land, that was working forest for decades. It was burnt heavily in the fire. There's no question about that. It had a heavy harvest in 1994, but it met stocking standards after that harvest was completed by state law. The fact that it was burned is not relevant as far as a rollout on TPZ if you look closely at the state law. It's the capacity of the land to grow timber. And the soils analysis that was done on that land and my land in the late 1960s show that it has a high capacity to grow timber. So
okay. Thank you.
I'm open to any questions.
Actually, I do have one question. You made a comment, you expressed your concern that the benefiting of one property owner through enhanced property rights, meaning the removal of the TPZ and the approval of the rezone, would be at the detriment of the neighboring property owner yourself.
Right.
Of the properties surrounding you now, how many of those properties are currently TPZ zoned?
3. Well, two other properties. There's three properties in the zone district.
Okay, and again, I apologize. I guess my map here doesn't show it, but I'm not showing any other on my map that are adjacent.
I'm a chainsaw guy. I don't know how to use that thing.
Okay, that are adjacent.
So on the board, you have the property in red.
Mm-hmm.
My land is immediately north.
Right.
North and east.
Right.
And then immediately east of the upper part of the land is a No, down.
Sorry.
East, there's east, there you go. Those are they're two assessor's parcels. They're actually one planning parcel, a 120-acre TPZ parcel. And that's TPZ as well.
Okay.
So this was originally set up.
But to immediately adjacent, I mean, I know that we touch on the corner there, but immediately adjacent surrounding your property, there are no other TPZ zone parcels?
No. To our north is, unfortunately, the Colfax City Sewer Plant.
Okay.
And to our west is a subdivision that went in the late 80s. And we've had significant conflicts with that subdivision. In fact, folks from that subdivision and other folks in the area tried to stop us from getting our harvest permit. It didn't stop us, it delayed us, but we missed the peak of the market, and we lost something in the neighborhood of $100,000.
And those are, my recollection is those are relative, to your west there, those are relatively small parcels, 2.3 to 5s, is that correct? So right now, the only TPZ that actually borders you is this particular property?
This property borders us, and we share a corner with the 120 parcel.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Was your, during the Ponderosa fire, was your property damaged? Did you lose some trees?
Yes, in the Ponderosa fire, the fire was actually stopped on our property. We had installed a shaded field break along the crest of the American River Canyon that we own, but we lost everything on the canyon side of that field break, which was about 100 acres, something like that.
Did you reforest? Did you?
We did. We planted 10,000, mostly ponderosa pine in that the winter after the fire, and we had very good survival. So we have most of that area. We planted trees everywhere we could stand up. It's kind of steep, and there was good soil. And everywhere we planted, we had excellent survival.
Was there state programs after the fire that helped you?
Yes.
Reforest?
State programs are really available to everyone. Now it's called the EQIP program, Environmental Quality Something Protection. We got a cost share that, for us, since we weren't grappling with brush, the cost share was just for the planting of trees. Now I've had some conversations with the USDA folks that run the program, and they will pay for controlling the brush, for planting the trees, and controlling the brush after the trees are planted, and their share of the payments are somewhere in excess of $2,000 an acre. So significant help in planting the trees.
Is there a sunset on that? Does that program run out?
No, it renews every year.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Wagon?
A couple of questions. So for staff, you might know Mr. Edwards, but it looks to me, quick math, that there's about 1,200 acres of TPC zoning in this group. Is that about right?
1,240, I think.
About 1,200.
Well, there was 1,120 in the original partnership, and there's 120 separate from that. So you add it up, and it's about 1,200.
And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like your primary concern would be focused on a significant diminishment of that total size of this block and the resulting impacts that it would have for you to be able to sustain your operation.
That is our primary personal concern. I mean, there are countywide issues, as I pointed out, but the owner of the owner of this property is trying to get it rezoned into housing. And the owner of the third parcel in the district, not ours, the 120, has already sent you a letter as a part of this proceeding declaring his intentions to rezone out of TPC as well. And so we would be the sole remaining tree farm in this area, in this zone district.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jennifer has
I have
a
one last
please.
question before you go, Mr. Edwards. The lands that were burned over on your property, you reforested immediately after.
Yes.
The Bunch Creek properties that we're talking about today still have that opportunity, is that correct? If I understood what you said about the $2,000 an acre?
They do. It was certainly an advantage to me to replant right after the fire because I wasn't grappling with brush. But it's very common in forest management to go into areas where the brush has taken over, get rid of the brush and replant. And particularly with the cost share, that reduces that upfront cost significantly.
Mhm. And then just, I mean, I think we all realize this, but timber production is a long-term proposal. It's not like you plant a tree and you go harvest it in 10 years.
No, it always is. It depends on how it's managed. For big outfits like Sierra Pacific, they manage, depending on the quality of their land, for a 40 to 60, 70-year crop cycle. Mm-hmm. On our land, we're managing for bigger trees, so we're managing for a 100-year crop cycle. It depends, but it's always a lot of years. That's the nature of the business.
Okay. And then, since you brought up SPI and the larger timber/logging companies, they do what's called even year harvesting, I believe, which is essentially what we would call probably clear cutting.
Even age management.
Even age management, thank you. And that leaves a situation, if I'm correct, where there is no timber on the property, but on that piece, but it's still managed for timber production. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that happens no matter what management system you're using. For every piece of ground, at some point, you start over again. Mm-hmm. That's whether you start over because you did a large clear cut, or what's called a group selection, which we can do, which is a small number of trees, or even an individual tree selection. For each piece of ground, as a part of managing the land, you start over every once in a while. Same as if you had an insect infestation that came through and killed all your trees, or a fire. That's just a natural part of that, of managing forest land.
But I mean, when you clear cut a piece of property, you don't just assume that it's going to go out of forest production, in other words?
No, you don't. You're actually, in California, if you clear cut, you're required by state law to replant. If it burns, you're not required by state law to replant. Okay. But you have, if you're a forest manager, you have a different set of responsibilities to replant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I don't see any more questions at this moment.
Thank you
very much. Mr. Remington, why don't I have you wait? Jack, wait one second.
Yes.
Have a seat. Let's see if there are other comments. You were very brief in your presentation of the applicants, so I will give you a little bit more time. But let's see if there are other comments before we have you come back up. Any other comments on this staff item at this point?
Good morning. I'm Michael Garabedian with Friends of the North Fork. We urge you to deny the applicants' applications for rezone, and as we understand it, they don't agree with the staff's proposal, so apparently if you refer it back, you would be making a county proposal to rezone that's different than what the applicants want to do. We think the use of the rezoning process to acquire pre-fire goals is a misuse of the zoning process. The county has addressed in its fire ordinance under the hazardous vegetation, it has addressed the question of properties with vegetation that could be fire hazards. The question I have for you to look into is whether that fire hazard ordinance adopted in 2007 applies to this land. It may not. I don't have much time, so I'll try to cover some points that haven't been dealt with. This property requires, the rollout, we finished our legal evaluation on Friday. This property requires the rollout requires a conversion permit from the CAL FIRE. The statute is very clear that forest land conversions have to get a permit from the state. We feel the Board of Forestry abused its discretion, did not have authority to say a rollout does not have to get a state conversion permit. We note that the environmental document you did on this does not deal with the fault, the Gillis Hill fault that runs down this ridge. The Boardman CEQA document that the county has done recently does identify this fault. It says that it's part of the foothills fault zone, which the Oroville fault is in, and that Boardman CEQA document suggests that this may be an active fault on this hill. The TPZ came along after the Williamson Act. Under the Williamson Act, if a farmer wants to quit farming or not continue their tree crop or row crop operation, they can walk away and get a 10-year rezone, and that's it. They can just do the rollout, the rezone, the non-renewal in 10 years. The legislature had to look at that and say, well, timber is different. If someone wants to get out of timber, to roll out of timber, they're going to have to get approval. There's obviously an investment in that land, and they recognize the forest lands deserve different treatment than Williamson Act land. The there's an attitude afoot here that we disagree with. It's kind of a philosophy that seems to suggest that the North Fork American River Canyon is a hazard to civilization, and to tame this hazard, we have to put houses on the ridge tops. This is not what the state fire plan doesn't contemplate this kind of action. The unit fire plan for the 3-county division of CAL FIRE unit does not contemplate this. And the unit plan does have one thing for Gillis Hill in it. It has a 2-page statement about what was done on the Edwards property to build a fire break there. It was completed part of the unit fire plan. So the answer to deal with the fire issue here is to prepare a Colfax area community wildfire protection plan, to gather the people, get the people together to develop a plan that will assure Colfax, and not to do piecemeal and rezoning process to try to deal with the rezoning issue. And we want to thank the landowners for their outreach to us, inviting us on their property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to address the board on this item? Yes, sir. Is there anybody other than this gentleman that's interested in talking? Well, other than, and I'm gonna give Jack a couple more minutes as the applicant, because he represented you and he was very brief in his presentation originally, I think less than a minute. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to come up under public comment when this gentleman is done, okay? And you will be limited to 3 minutes as a member of the public. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Peach, and I'm here on behalf of Protect American River Canyons. We've kind of followed this project for the last year or so. We are also landowners on the North Fork of the American River. We own 80 acres of land outright, and we're partners on 30 acres of land with the Placer Land Trust, and we manage our land for passive recreation. We pretty much follow the same regulations that State Parks has on their river land. And what I would like to really cover, our president submitted about 4 pages of comments on this project, and I would hope that you would look at them closely. A lot of our interests are, wildlife corridors, establishing areas that wildlife can get into and live in without coming in contact with, or having to come in contact with so many rural residences. We're also concerned about the scenic view shed and the placement of houses on the ridges that kind of takes away from the value of the potential wild and scenic river here. I want to thank the landowners for allowing us to go on their tour and then allowing me to return and go on a hike to look over the property. And the scenic view shed is really spectacular there, and parts of it belong to all of us in California. On one particular part of the land, you can see Mount Diablo, you can see the Sutter Buttes, and you can see the Pacific Crest. What I would like to emphasize to this board is that perhaps you follow a different model than the homeowners initiated with this land conversion into residential. Why not try a collaborative approach like the county has done in Hidden Falls and other areas, where you take private partnerships along with agencies coming up with the funds, conservation funds, to put easements on the land, and then establish a reforestry project here, which they have just completely dismissed. As Mr. Edwards mentioned, there are funds available, it looks like through Ag, and the Sierra Nevada Conservancy offers funds for reforestation projects as well, too. So we would encourage the landowner to maybe take a different model here and to try to establish something that is the benefit for the entire community and the entire region, and not just, a few individuals, and keeps the land in timber production. We feel like this would be the most beneficial use of the land. And I know that they appreciate this as well, too, because as I hiked up the property last weekend with a friend, a botanist, we noticed some horse prints that we were following along the way. And I think that it was one of the property owners that was probably up there appreciating the very same thing that we were, and hopefully the rest of the community gets a chance to. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay, sir, you hadn't identified yourself earlier. Is there anybody else other than the property owners and that gentleman that wishes to address the board on this item? Okay, that gentleman and then the two property owners, and then I'm going to go back to Mr. Remington representing the applicant. And that will be it. Bearing in mind that we are being asked not necessarily to take action today, but refer this back so that it comes to us at some date in the future.
My name is Larry Risser. I live at 23,000 Black Bear Road. I own this 40-acre piece, this 80-acre piece, an 11.5-acre piece here, which has my house on it, right about where the end of the arrow is. Is there a way to go to the aerial? Okay. My main concern is fire danger. If you look at this aerial, this is after the burn, and again, my house is, where is my house? Right about here, right there, actually. And you can see the area that was burned is all brush now, about 5 feet tall. And anytime a fire comes through there, it's going to go straight up that draw very quickly, right toward my house. So that's my main concern. If you elect to wait 10 years to do anything with this, then that's 10 more years of brush growing 5 feet higher, and the fire danger getting even much more serious. There is an argument about whether houses, start fires or prevent fires. With the North Fork of the American River there's a good chance that a fire is going to happen regardless. I take great care to do fire prevention around our house. Our house was in the middle of the fire and was saved because of defensible space. And Mr. Edwards, does the same thing, is credited with helping stop the fire. I think if he lived in Davis still and didn't move here 10, 15 years ago, he probably wouldn't spend every day out there doing the work that he did. So I think it's, people cause fires, but people can also prevent fires. And that's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you two gentlemen.
Good morning, Board. My name is Fred Basquin, and I was just wondering if you guys had any questions for me regarding this property. None. And, well, we're not trying to take this out of timber production. We're actually just trying to get it into 80-acre parcels, and it still can be produce timber. We've tried to sell our property to the conservancies, and nobody's been interested in buying that. We've had numerous professionals that have gone up there and said we have no impact whatsoever on our neighbors, archaeology sites, floral or fauna, and actually we're going to be improving the fire protection in that area. We've tried to get grants through the state for reforestation, and they're completely out of money from what I understand. I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Jed Parker, one of the owners along with Fred. And I just want to, I know you're not going to take action on this today, but if you vote not to go through the other agencies, then what happens then? I mean, you're asking for recommendation to go back through the other boards? If they vote not to do that today, then what happens?
If this goes back to the Planning Commission and Agricultural Commission, as well as consideration by the Municipal Advisory Council and WEMAR, they would be providing recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors has the final say on this matter because it's a legislative act that you've requested.
I think his
to rezone.
question is, what if there's an affirmative action by this board to not recommend that the project go back to the Ag Commission, the MAC, and the Planning Commission?
The board's comments today would be considered advisory. It certainly has to go back to the commission because of the government code provisions. Their actions then would be brought forward to the board as a recommendation.
It was just, I think his question is because it was asserted earlier that the board could take action today to not do that and effectively kill the application. And I think that's what he's responding to, was the assertion made by somebody earlier. And what I think I hear you saying is that that's not necessarily in our purview today.
Yeah, unless I hear otherwise from council, what we do today, based upon both staff's recommendation or any modification of that made by board members, is to take this back to the commission because the applicants have revised their project description. The revision of that project description essentially forces us to go back to the Planning Commission for consideration.
Tony, do you want to clarify?
The item has not been noticed as a public hearing. It's not been appropriately noticed for action. If the board wanted to deny any aspects of this application, the board would give direction to staff to re-notice it on the board's agenda at some future date, consistent with state law notice requirements, to give summary action to deny it. But that's not the request from the department, and that's not the recommendation to the board. But nobody can vote on this because simply, even if we wanted to, it hasn't been noticed for a vote today.
Well, had we known,
Go ahead. And then
had we known that we would have to go back through all those votes again by changing our application, we wouldn't have changed it. We didn't know that. So since that's where we're at right now, I'm just going to add a couple little points of food for thought between now and when we do come back for a vote, as with the others. I wanted to remind you that we didn't mismanage this timberland. We bought it 3 years after the fire, and the brush was already out of control. And at least we've got the planning to go from a denial to a rezone now. And now it's all about parcel size. And 80 acres is the general plan for this land right now. Right, Crystal?
The zoning is 160, and the general plan land use designation is ag timberland with an 80-acre minimum.
So, as Fred said, we're going from timber to forest. We just want to get it back to the general plan. As you can see in the picture there, you can see the burned area. It's all scarred up from the dozers and everything that's been up there. Now, the timbered part of that land, where the end of the yellow arrow is, it looks timbered, but it's oak trees. And I doubt if there is 5% of those trees that are harvestable timber, and oak trees are not timber. Wish we wouldn't have changed that application. So right now we have 160 acre parcels up there, TPZ. They're recommending residential forest 160s. Well, why would we want that if we already have 160s with the cheapest tax rate in the county? We wouldn't want to go to residential 160s. It's all about the parcel size again. We want to go back to what the general plan is. We could replant this inexpensive tax land right now, and in 60 to 100 years, we'll have a harvest, and Placer County will get some tax money out of this. But until then, they're not going to get anything, and that's if we planted it today, the whole thing. Placer County is being denied quite a few taxes on this thing. Now, I'm not saying we want to pay more taxes, but we do want to pay more taxes if we can get the parcel size down to 80-acre parcels. So it's all about the parcel size. Do you have any questions for us, like, why did we buy this?
Supervisor Wenning has a question, but I don't know if it's of you.
No, I have a question, but I think Tony essentially clarified.
I think we're done, sir. Thank you.
But of course, I'm still confused, so. There was an application that went through the process that came to the Board of Supervisors a couple of years ago. So if we took action today to put on the agenda something for consideration or denial, I heard you say that we could do that, we could bring that back to the board, but that would be essentially the original application, with my question being, the key question being, they could bring forward a new application as per staff's recommendation, regardless of what the board does today or subsequently. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Thanks.
I don't think we have any more questions to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jack, did you have a couple concluding remarks as the representative of the applicant?
We hired a forester to do the plan. I'm sorry, not a true final forest management plan, but in a great deal of information in March 27th of '06. That report shows that this is poor timber ground. In fact, I have the soils maps from Soil Conservation District, or whatever it's called today, over on Auburn Ravine Road, that shows different soil than Mr. Edwards has said is there. Now, he had some work done. It's different than what the state has. So based on the state information, it is not good timberland. So that's one of the whole arguments here. The other thing is, we have to go forward with the option of an immediate out or a 10-year out, because if we go only with an immediate out and it's denied, then we're done. So we'll go forward that way. And one of the issues has always been that we applied for the caretaker's residence and we're told no, he would not, the zoning administrator would not approve it. We had to go through a rezone because there was no timber left. So that's why we're here. I get the understanding today that we might be able to get a full-fledged residence on there and still have it in TPZ.
Keep it in TPZ, but with what I'm assuming your clients are still looking for, even if it were kept in TPZ, is the 80-acre minimum issue. But what I think I hear you delving into is the possibility of simply focusing on the modification to the minimum lot size from a 160 down to an 80, but possibly keeping the TPZ and letting the caretaker residents address the concern that you would have in that regard.
Yes. Thank you.
And that might be an interesting way, as this goes back to the Ag Commission and the Planning Commission, that might be an interesting way for staff and the applicant to get together and have a conversation that addresses some of the concerns that were expressed by folks about the preservation of the TPZ zone.
Okay. I also have prepared a map that shows other TPZ zonings outside the immediate area, and there are 2 of them across the North Fork of the American River in excess of a half mile, close to 3/4 of a mile away. There are none on the west side of the river. Okay. So, I mean, this is an isolated spot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board member, we'll close public hearing. Board members have any questions? Staff at this point, Ms. Montgomery?
Crystal and Lauren, it sounded to me like staff would not, if the partners were willing to keep it in TPZ, it sounded as if staff would not be willing to support the 80-acre proposal.
If they were willing to keep it in TPZ but change the zone district minimum to 80-acre minimum, the concern we have is that both the current code is 160-acre minimum. We certainly have the ability under all of our zone districts to exercise independent discretion on lot size. But in this case, lot size also has a linkage to state law in that criteria that Crystal read into the record earlier about certain findings, not a finding you have to make, but you have to have a joint management plan, has to be recorded as a deed restriction. So there's steps that you have to go through to reduce that lot size down to 80-acre minimum. We would also suggest that is it precedent setting in the county that we're going to consider 80-acre minimum as a standard under that criteria.
When our policy is 160.
I think we would want to have a thorough examination of TPZ, whether or not, is it just in this instance that it's unique because of its location, it's at the extreme western edge of TPZ in the county, or is there a larger, broader policy concern that we would have about that lot size?
Okay. I am concerned that if we take this land out of TPZ, whether through an immediate conversion or through a 10-year rollout, you know, if we change our rules in midstream, as it were, that we are creating a precedent that goes against current county policy. I have some real concerns about that, and it would be my direction to staff that we take, because we have to, that we take this modified project back through the MAC, through the Ag Commission, through the Planning Commission. It would certainly be my recommendation that we do not look at a conversion, an immediate conversion. We look at a couple of things, the possibility of keeping it in TPZ and potentially changing the parcel size if that maintains the integrity of the TPZ. I do have concerns if we can't make the findings for an immediate conversion, how we can justify, for lack of a better word, a 10-year rollout. I'm not sure how it changes from my perspective. I can't speak for the rest of my board at all, but I don't understand how that changes the conditions on the ground or what's being proposed. I'm happy to open it up to the rest of the board for comments, but I would suggest we send this back through the process and make the perspective of this board clear to the Planning Commission, what we talked about in discussion today, and that they further consider at their earliest available meeting date, contingent obviously upon the MAC and the Ag Commission, that they return to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for a final action that's a specific action that we can take and that we can affirm or deny. And then on the second recommendation from staff in here, I've lost the page, about whether we should just look at the policy of residential homes in TPZ. I would recommend to this board and to staff that we do not look at changing that policy, but that we keep them as caretaker units in which full-time residents and homeowners can actually live. So that's my position.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion, if anyone's interested in seconding it.
Okay. We have a motion by Supervisor Montgomery to refer this back, but with direction, I guess, provided from the board. Supervisor Waggett?
Yeah, just comments if we're going to go in that direction. My concerns, questions for which I will want answers as this is reviewed at different levels, include, I'm not a professional forester, so emphasizing that, the ramifications of diminishing the size of this cluster of TPZ standards zoning, the amount of acreage of 1,200 acres. And with that, I don't know that I'd like to have a more full discussion about the county's policy with regards to the minimum lot size for TPZ being 160, economic management ramifications of all of that. So I guess I'd first be looking at this particular area in that vein. We have this 1,200 acre contiguous section of TPZ zoning with obviously some economic viability for timber harvesting. And what would it mean if we changed the total size of that? And then secondly, a thorough look at the minimum lot size for TPZ zoning generally in the county and specifically as it relates to this elevation of timberland.
Okay. Staff clear on the what the motion was?
One point of clarification, there is a provision in the state standard that asks us to send it back to the Planning Commission for a 40-day turnaround. We would simply want the board to acknowledge in their decision today that this could take longer than that. Otherwise, it's a deemed approval standard. So we would just simply want the acknowledgement that it will probably take longer to go to the Ag Commission, Planning Commission, and Weimar Applegate, Colfax than the 40 days in the state statute.
Other than that, if you wouldn't mind reading back what your understanding of the motion is.
I'll deal with the second one, which is the simpler one, which is that we not consider any sort of further policy review or consideration of change in our caretaker standards that are contained presently within the timberland production zone. But two, that we send this back to the Weimar Applegate Colfax Municipal Advisory Council first, Agricultural Commission, Planning Commission second. I'm not sure of the staging there, but we'll look at hearing schedules to align those as closely as possible to consider the applicant's revised application for a 10-year rollout with their current request of it being residential forest 80-acre minimum. And that further, that we bring both to the Planning Commission, Ag Commission, and the Board of Supervisors additional information as it relates to the potential effects of diminishing this 1,200-acre TPZ area in the Weimar area. What are the ramifications, the consequences of that area getting smaller specifically? And secondly, that we take a look at the both the economic and management consequences of potentially changing parcels from 160-acre minimum to 80-acre minimum in the timberland production zones.
And the only thing that I would add to that was an inclusion somehow, I don't know, it's nuanced probably, of what the perspective of this board was in the discussions today.
Any other comments by any other board members? Okay, with that, since it would have been my preference that this simply be referred back without any kind of bias, I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Weigand?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
No. Thank you very much. And we will take a brief break, about 5 minutes, get back here at about 11:30 to continue the board's items.
I think it would have this time, so.
And the microphone's on now. Okay.
That's why they give me that extensive training, to be able to push that button right there.
My name's Tom Quinn. I'm the Forest Supervisor of the Tahoe National Forest. I also have with me today Chris Fisher, who's the District Ranger for the American River Ranger District, which is primarily in Placer County. Of the 4 ranger districts on the Tahoe, Chris has got most of Placer County. And Ann Wessling, the Public Affairs Officer for the Tahoe National Forest, is with me also. You know, we had a PowerPoint presentation, and ooh, here it comes. I was about to say, you know, in the interest of time, as fascinating as the last subject was, and it was actually kind of a classic textbook Western land use case, I'm going to make this really brief today. I'm going to go shorter than I had originally planned. Originally, we've been having a series of meetings. We've had 3 open house workshop type things. One was in Placer County in Auburn at the Ridge Golf Course last week or the week before. We've had one in Nevada County. We've had one in Sierra County. And we also are making the rounds at the Boards of Supervisors meetings, just in interest of updating you what's going on. And if I start showing slides, I'm going to talk too long, because that's just the nature of how that happens. So I'm going to cut to the chase on a couple things to just update you. We released a draft environmental impact statement in 2008, late 2008. We were preparing to go to a final environmental impact statement right about now with an accompanying decision, or what's called a record of decision under the National Environmental Policy Act. We received over 7,000 separate comments to our draft environmental impact statement. Many of those were form letters. Probably over 6,000 of the 7,000 were form letters from one side or the other. We did get a number of fairly substantive comments. The responses to those substantive comments will be in the final environmental impact statement when it comes out, or it will accompany the record of decision. Comments we received on the draft environmental impact statement from a few key constituents, particularly landowners. And the one slide, I guess, maybe is worth showing, and Ann, if you could. Oh, the heck with it. All right. It's just a map of the Tahoe. And for those of you familiar with Tahoe, it's a very checkerboarded national forest. Much of that goes back to railroad days when every other section was granted the railroads for investing in development of the railroads across the West. We've been pecking away at that since 1905. And far more of the Tahoe within the boundary of the Tahoe is green now than it was, but there's still lots of checkerboard. There's lots of land owned by Sierra Pacific Industries, PG&E, NID, and many other smaller landowners. Some of those landowners, and most particularly SPI and PG&E, commented that by looking at our databases on our draft and our maps, we were showing, as part of our National Forest Transportation System, we were showing roads and trails that, in fact, were on their private land. And that was an error in our database. We also found a few cases, I guess I'd call those errors of commission. We had a few errors of omission where we had some roads shown as county roads or shown as private land that, upon reviewing our database more closely, in fact turned out to be on national forest land. We did a spot check on some of those and realized that the magnitude of the error was large enough that it could influence the final decision. At the same time, we had some other commenters on our drafts, particularly environmental organizations, but some others as well, who said, you know, you're showing Road X over here as an open portion of your National Forest Transportation System. But in fact, you guys did this NEPA document in 1995, let's say, for a timber sale, and part of the decision associated with that NEPA document was to close this 2-mile segment of road upon completion of the timber sale. And in some cases, those segments of roads indeed were closed out on the ground, gated, in some cases barricaded, in some cases even totally decommissioned, ripped, and replanted. But in fact, in our database, which is a GIS exercise, they still were shown as open. So we had literally hundreds of miles of roads in our database that our database showed as open portion of our National Forest Transportation System, that either because of an error in us thinking it was on National Forest System land when it was in fact on private land, or one that we thought we had a right-of-way for that we did not, or one that a previous NEPA decision had made a decision to close, and the database still showed it as open. In summary, we had roughly 500 miles of our 2,800 miles of motorized roads and trails that some error of one form or another had taken place in the database, and this predates me, and it goes back years in terms of when this database was built. Of that 500, about a net of 400 reduction, because there were some additions and some subtractions, but a net reduction of about 400 miles of motorized roads or trails. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. That's not a key point here is that's not a decision we made to close those. That's strictly a data correction. These were roads that, many of which are open to the public, by the way. SPI gates some of their lands, but many of SPI's lands and PG&E and NID lands are open to the public to recreate on, but they're not in our National Forest Transportation System. So we didn't make a decision to close. It's just a database correction. That being said, in our draft environmental impact statement, we estimated we had approximately 2,800 miles of motorized roads and trails on the Tahoe National Forest. Incredible road and motorized network. With these corrections, we still have just over approximately 2,400 of motorized roads and trails open. Those corrections, we believe, though, were substantive enough, and more importantly, perhaps our Office of General Counsel attorneys thought they were substantive enough, that to withstand probably an inevitable set of appeals on this decision, because it is controversial, and potential litigation, which many forests are experiencing, that we need to be as clean as possible in our environmental analysis. So rather than go directly to a final environmental impact statement and decision, we have issued a supplemental draft environmental impact statement, which has been released 3 weeks ago now, and the public comment period closes on April 12th. So that's why we're doing these shows. While reviewing the draft and while reviewing the 7,000 comments, and during this period where we corrected the database, we also took it as an opportunity to modify our preferred alternative as if we're moving towards the final. And in response to comments from the public, we have modified the preferred alternative as well, and that's available in the supplemental draft for comment. And I'm not going to go into every change we made, but a few of them I'm going to touch upon, some of which are particularly relevant to the Placer County portion of the forest. But we have shortened the seasonal restrictions on motor vehicle use by 1 month for routes on the west side of the forest to enhance opportunities for motorized recreation. We did hear quite regularly, some people don't want us to have seasonal restrictions at all. This is for mud. The trails and roads are greatly damaged when they're ridden upon and during the wet and muddy season. The draft environmental impact statement had recommended date. Do you know the actual dates, Chris?
I know the current dates.
It's not that vital, but upon hearing from folks to shorten that, we've elected to do that in the preferred alternative in the supplemental. So we are going to shorten the seasons of closures by a month. If we have an unusually wet early season, we can always extend that very easily. If we have an unusually wet late season, we can extend it on that end. So that's why we've elected to shorten it. One of the comments we heard that surprised us a little bit was the amount of interest in wheeled over snow use. We knew we had a lot of snowmobile use, and this plan does not address snowmobile use. This is strictly motorized roads and trails for wheeled use. Well, it turns out this wheeled over snow use is a growing interest. And so we had folks asking for more opportunities for wheeled over snow use. Well, there are no restrictions against driving a wheeled vehicle over snow on our higher maintenance level roads, levels 3, 4, and 5, and these are hardened surface type roads. But we did have restrictions on the level 2 and 2 roads, which are native surface roads, which are more likely to be damaged. We did add 3.6 miles in the Fordyce Jeep Trail area for wheeled over snow use at a period of time when there's at least 15 inches of snow there. It's going to be tough to implement, but it's a trial that we're going to give that a go. We have, one of the controversial aspects of these plans on every forest is what's called motorized mixed use, and this is where non-street legal vehicles, unlicensed dirt bikes, green sticker vehicles, dirt bikes, ATVs, are riding on the same roads with licensed vehicles, including log trucks occasionally, worst case scenario. Right now, that's taking place on most forests, and under this plan, we've been instructed to cinch that down quite a bit based on concerns about public safety, liability, et cetera. So we did a complete analysis of those roads where motorized mixed use was proposed, and we had certified engineers do an evaluation on the probability of a crash between green sticker vehicles and other street legal vehicles. And in the case of a crash, the severity, the likely severity of such a crash, and we just rated that on a low, medium, high scale. And in general, if something rated out as medium or high, we would not be permitted to go ahead and authorize motorized mixed use on those. And some of these are county roads as well. Pretty controversial. In one example of why it's controversial is you may have an OHV area over here and an OHV area over here, and you may have a 4-mile segment of paved road to get from here to here. Folks don't want to drive there, offload from trailers, do their thing, have to reload again, drive that 3 or 4 miles on the paved road, unload again, stage, and then go here. People want to zip down that paved road and have all that as part of an experience. Long term, what we would like to do is get folks off that dangerous paved section, develop a trail link where we can link those up, and we would hope to use state green sticker funds in the future, working with the OHV groups to apply for grants to develop that. But in the meantime, some of those segments will be closed under this plan because of the safety concerns. And that is one of the hot button issues in some of the counties north of here particularly. We are looking to minimize the impact of that issue to some degree. In some cases, we're lowering our maintenance level from maintenance level 3, where that liability issue is large, down to maintenance level 2, which is the native surface roads. The mixed use is allowed on the maintenance level 2s, the theories being that it's so rough and rocky that vehicles need to go much more slowly, the probability of an accident and the severity, if there was an accident, is lowered, and therefore we can authorize that. That's a double-edged sword because a lot of folks don't like riding on rough, bumpy, rocky roads, so there's no free lunch in this thing. Another mitigation measure for that mixed use that we're proposing, and we're the only forest in the region, as far as I know, and maybe in the country that's proposing this, is we do have a few places, primarily in Sierra County, but also here in Placer County, where the economy is pretty dependent upon deer hunting. And many deer hunters, particularly the older ones, like to use quads, their ATVs, for deer hunting. And so we are proposing on some of our level 3 roads to authorize motorized mixed use, i.e. the green sticker quads and dirt bikes, during deer season only. So it's a very narrow season where mixed use will be allowed to occur in those areas. This is buying some goodwill in Sierra County, where the economy is particularly dependent upon that seasonal deer hunting, and a lot of folks do like to hunt with quads. So we're going to try that. We'll give it a couple of years. We'll monitor that and see if there's some safety issues associated with that. One school of thought is it really safer? Because some of those guys riding those quads on those level 3 roads are hunting for deer while riding their quads and looking in the woods instead of looking here. I hope that's not the case, but we will monitor that and see what the safety concerns are. One of the major changes we've made between the draft and final, and this was largely in response to public comment, one of the most controversial aspects of all these plans on the 18 national forests in California is a decision was made that these plans are going to eliminate cross-country travel. That's their primary goal. We're going to have a single designated system of motorized roads and trails, and that'll be on maps and motor vehicle use maps, and folks will be able to download that, and they'll be able to know where it's legal and where it's not. But we're going to prohibit travel off of those authorized systems. Well, a lot of people like to recreate, some of you perhaps on national forest land, where you're driving down a dirt road and you see a little spur going off, and you like to drive down that spur, and maybe you set up your tent there or go fishing or just read a book or whatever it might be. That's how I like to recreate on national forest land. Unless that little spur is on the National Forest Transportation System as an authorized route, under this new system, it would be illegal to ride off of the designated route. So we heard from people that, and what we've been told is that you will not be authorized to go more than one car length from a designated route. So it would preclude you, technically, from driving off of those routes. So we've identified right now, we're proposing to add 400, roughly, of these spur routes, and including them into our National Forest Transportation System, making it legal that you are authorized to go off these spurs to camp or picnic or fish or whatever it might be. We will be looking for those existing spurs out in the ground that are particularly of concern, whether they go through an archaeological site or a rare plant botanical site or a sensitive riparian area, and we'll be making those sensitive ones posted as closed as much as possible, barricaded as much as possible, and those are the places we'll focus our enforcement, not on every little spur that folks are going off on. There were some changes at the three major reservoirs over on the east side, Boca, Stampede, and Prosser. I think in the interest of time, I'll pass on that. I will say very briefly that under the draft plan, that entire area would be closed below the high water mark. We heard from a lot of people that they want to be able to drive, that those reservoirs go way down at low water. So we are proposing several corridors, not willy-nilly anywhere in below the low water mark or high water mark, because it turns out there are some key archaeological sites in those reservoir basins. But we are proposing some corridors that will be identified where you can get down to the high water mark. Not to make the entire reservoir below the high water mark an OHV play area, but to provide access for street legal vehicles to the water's edge for fishing or picnicking or throwing a stick for your dog or whatever. Those really are the major changes, I would say, between the draft and this supplemental draft. And again, they were largely in trying to be responsive comments we received on the draft. Our plan right now is to be moving, well, we have this 45-day comment period that ends on April 12th. We'll be reviewing those comments, and we hope to have a final decision out as early as June. It may be slightly longer than that, depending on how things play out. And I'll be glad to come before the board again when that decision is released to go over the details of that decision.
Great. Any questions by any board members? Supervisor Wygant?
Just roughly, I'm thinking of these spurs, and I'm thinking of how somebody like me who's happily lost all the time when I'm in the National Forest, what information will you have available? I'm thinking of GPS technology now that's pretty darn common, to let you know what part of these spurs and which spurs would be actually available, so you ended up not getting yourself into trouble.
Eventually, we do hope to have where you can actually download the entire National Forest Transportation System and have it on your GPS and know what's open and what's closed. We don't have that yet. Now, you can download the preferred alternative. In fact, we distributed the discs that we gave you will have the preferred alternative and computerized maps where you can pull those up and see. But it's not the same as having it downloaded on your GPS unit. Right now, though, all we'll have is a paper map, a motor vehicle use map, and then we'll have, for popular areas, Sugar Pine area, for instance, places on the American River District, we'll have better scale maps for those high-use areas showing what's open and what's not. And also, we have a big signing effort to make sure these things are well posted on the ground on where you're supposed to be. Of course, we all know signs are removed and vandalized, so that's an issue. One little factoid for you that I neglected to bring up. Sometimes we hear from the OHV community, once again, you guys are shutting me out of my national forest, and I'm very sympathetic to that. But again, we've got over 2,400 miles of motorized roads and trails under preferred alternative. 83% of the forest under this preferred alternative, we did this through a GIS mapping exercise, 83% of the forest is within a half mile of a motorized road or trail. Pretty hard to say you're being locked out of your forest when 83% of a pretty large forest is within a half mile of a motorized road and trail. We have very little wilderness, congressionally designated wilderness on the Tahoe National Forest, one of the smallest in the entire United States, which surprises people. And that's partly because of the long legacy of mining and logging on this forest. It's not that steep of a forest really in the high country, so it's readily accessible. So not much of it was ever tied up in wilderness. So it's heavily roaded, it's heavily trailed, And right now, we're not closing any of the existing authorized roads and trails. We're just simply not adding a whole bunch of new stuff, of unauthorized stuff, to the system under this proposal.
Other questions by the board members? I don't see any. Mr. Quinn, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to thank Tom for coming out today. He and I have had discussions, as Chris and I, about this in the past, because this is of great concern to folks in the Forest Hill area particularly. And it's really important to me that this kind of outreach be done. And I want to thank you and as well for coming out and doing this, because it matters a great deal to my constituents what happens on, our public roads within the National Forest. Thank you.
Well, we welcome the use, and we know it's an important economic contributor to small communities like Forest Hill, so we just need to balance that with the ecological sensitivities. I was going to mention that Chris and I met with Supervisor Montgomery last month for quite some length of time, much longer than this, on the subject, knowing that was of particular interest to her district. So.
And Tom?
Just an aside, I want to acknowledge the efforts of the Tahoe National Forest and the county's biomass efforts, and being a partner in that, and deeply appreciate your staff being engaged upon that. And it's not today's subject, but
well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to bring that up quickly, because we're kind of excited. There's a new grant program the Forest Service has, kind of an internal grant program where you have to compete for funds with other forests, and we're currently in the process of putting together a proposal to get some of that new grant money for fuels management, for biomass removal, for overall watershed restoration. And the projects that we have elected to propose for the Tahoe is in Placer County, and we'll be working in cooperation with the county, with Placer County Water Agency and other partners, because like most grants, the more partners you have, the more competitive you're going to be. And the reason we selected the project here was of the partnership that we do have with a number of entities in the county. So we're excited about that and hope we're successful.
Great, thank you.
You'll be hearing about that if we are successful.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, thank you so much again for your time. Appreciate you being here. Okay, let's go ahead, move on to item number 13, Department Head, Mr. Durfee, Mr. Swift.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Jim Durfee with Facility Services. I also have with me Joel Swift, the Deputy Director, and then we also have Captain Malem from the Sheriff's Department and Rob Unholtz available if your Board has questions. In the interest of time, I just wanted to, we want to make a recommendation today that your Board approve and authorize the Chairman to execute contract change order number 9 for the South Placer Adult Correctional Facility in the amount of $1,592,951. This is a little bit different process than your Board's used to seeing. Usually we do, the majority of our construction over the years has been done with a design bid build process. As your Board will recall, we have a design build process underway for the Justice facility, the correction facility. And your Board is required to approve any change orders that are in excess of $150,000 per the Public Contract Code. You're seeing these change orders early on in the process because we take care of changes during the design process in a design build delivery method rather than during the construction process, which would be more the norm historically here. The intent is to ferret out those kinds of things that that were either changed during the design process or as part of the design process come up as desired changes by the owners. Once we get through design, we shouldn't see these kinds of changes at all. That's the beauty of a design build process. We get these things out of the way during the upfront design part of the delivery method. I think that the changes are pretty well depicted in your staff report. If you have any questions, we have staff here to answer them, but I did want to remind you that we're in a little bit different process than your Board normally sees. So with that, in the interest of time, we'll answer any questions you have, but I do recommend approval.
Questions by Board members? Seeing none, do we have any member of the public wish to address the Board on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion? A motion by Holmes, second by Wygant to approve item number 13 regarding the change orders for our South Placer Adult Correctional Facility. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Thank you.
And item number 14.
Good morning, Chair Yule, members of the board. I'm Cheryl Davis from your Human Services Division. Today, we're before you requesting your approval to move forward with electronic document management for human services using the board-approved contractor L.R. Hines. The action before you today is consistent with both your board and the CEO's vision of having the most cost-effective, efficient, and secure document management of all of our public documents that we deal with every day. And in addition, this program that we would be implementing would be consistent with how you have rolled it out in the other departments in the county, including CEDRA and your recently approved Treasury initiative. Additionally, this is a mandated program for us to move to document imaging, and fortunately, for a change, it is a fully funded mandate. So there is no county general funds needed to make this a reality. Again, in the interest of time, we're recommending that you approve for us a contract with L.R. Hines, who you have previously approved to implement the countywide document imaging initiatives, purchase the necessary document scanners, and then approve a budget revision to recognize the fixed assets acquisition of the document scanners. Any questions?
Questions by board members? Questions by public? We have a
Second.
motion by Supervisor Holmes, second by Montgomery to approve the item. Roll call, please.
Holmes?
Aye.
Weigand? Montgomery?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
We have a series of items under Public Works, most of them led by Mr. Kratz, looks like. And I'm going to step back for one moment, turn it over to Supervisor Weigand.
Thank you, Supervisor Weigand. 5 items here for various contracts in the Sunset area. Try to abbreviate if that's okay, looking at the time of the day.
Definitely okay.
First one is item 15A, proposed action is to sign and approve a professional services agreement with Drake Hagelin and Associates, an engineering consulting firm, to provide preliminary engineering work for the Alpine Meadows Replacement Bridge project. The project entails replacing the existing structurally deficient bridge located on Alpine Meadows Road over the Truckee River and near the intersection with State Route 89, approximately 5 miles north of Tahoe City. This proposed action is determined to be exempt from CEQA. The Phase 1 design effort will be funded by federal HBB program funding in a majority sense, 88.53%. And the rest with local funding, similar to our other bridge projects. So with that, respectfully request your board adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to sign and approve PSA number 1084 with the consultant in the amount of $367,200 for the specified work, and authorize the director of public works to approve and sign future amendments up to $36,720.
Questions by the board? Moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 15B is another professional services agreement for the Homewood Water Quality Improvement Project, also up in Lake Tahoe area. The proposed action is to sign and approve a PSA with Nichols Consulting Engineers, an engineering consulting firm, to provide planning and design services for the project. The project will result in stormwater quality improvement features for the Homewood area along the west shore of Lake Tahoe. The features will better control and treat runoff in our jurisdiction, thereby improving the quality and clarity of Lake Tahoe as mandated by regulatory agencies. Fiscally, the design effort will be fully funded by the U.S. Forest Service Erosion Control Grants Program. And with that, we respectfully request your board adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to sign and approve PSA number 1090 with Nichols in the amount of $248,900 for the specified work, and authorize the director of public works to approve and sign future amendments up to $24,890.
Questions by the board? Moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Peter.
Okay. Item 15C is an amendment to an existing professional services agreement. The proposed action is to sign and approve amendment number 1 of an existing PSA with Wood Rogers, Inc., an engineering consulting firm, to provide expanded design services for the Lake Forest Erosion Control Project, specifically referred to as Area A, that will include stream environment zone, wildlife habitat, and water quality improvements in the Lake Forest and Highlands subdivision and adjacent areas of North Lake Tahoe. This amendment number 1 to the PSA will complete the project's final design, which is related to county roadside drainage facilities in that area. Fiscally, the Amendment Number 1 effort will be fully funded through the California Tahoe Conservancy and the U.S. Forest Service Erosion Control Grants Program. And with that, I respectfully request your board adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to sign and approve PSA number 1037, Amendment Number 1, with Wood Rogers, Inc. in the amount of $386,000 for the specified work, and authorize the Director of Public Works to approve and sign future amendments up to $38,600.
Questions? Moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item D.
Item 15D, moving down to the west side of the county. This relates to the Sunset Industrial Area Railroad Overcrossing Project. The proposed action is to approve addition of this project to the Sunset Benefit District Capital Improvement Program of the countywide traffic mitigation fee program and approve a funding agreement with the Placer County Redevelopment Agency. For some time, the Union Pacific Railroad facilities at the Sunset Industrial Area have been identified as a potential obstacle to the efficient movement of traffic. What I would call a deficient railroad overcrossing on Sunset Boulevard and an at-grade railroad crossing at Athens grade results, along with the projected traffic growth in the area, results in the need to study and analyze an improved railroad crossing in the area. Based on this need, Public Works is requesting the study of an improved railroad crossing to be added to the existing Sunset Benefit District CIP in the amount of $1 million. The increase will be offset by the Placer County Redevelopment Agency through a funding agreement to increase their contribution to the benefit district by $1 million for a total RDA commitment of $7 million, which you heard previously today. The current mitigation fee for the Sunset Benefit District is $6,500 per dwelling unit. Your board's positive action today will not change the current fee. The action is determined to be exempt from CEQA, and the funding for the proposed increase to the benefit district is included in the current and proposed fiscal year department budgets. So with that, I respectfully request your board adopt the resolution approving the addition of the Sunset Industrial Area Railroad Overcrossing Project to the Sunset Benefit District Capital Improvement Program of the county-wide traffic mitigation fee program, and authorize the Director of Public Works to execute a funding agreement in the amount of $1 million with the Placer County Redevelopment Agency to offset the increase.
Questions of staff? Any members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion on item D, please? Motion by Weigand, second Holmes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. Item E.
Item E is, as a follow-up to item 15D, is to now approve the award of a competitive request for proposal to CH2M Hill, an engineering consulting firm, to provide various professional services for analyzing the Sunset Industrial Area Railroad Overcrossing Project. As described in the previous board item, Public Works has identified the need to study a new grade separated railroad crossing in the Sunset Industrial Area to improve safety and mobility of vehicular traffic in the area. To further define the final contract with the selected firm, Public Works is proposing to move forward quickly utilizing our existing blank purchase order with CH2M Hill in an amount of approximately $60,000 to perform preliminary traffic studies that will refine options for full contract scoping. This action is determined to be exempt from CEQA, and the initial funding for the contract with CH2M Hill will come from the Sunset Industrial Area Traffic Impact Fee Benefit District and is included in the current and proposed fiscal year department budgets. So with that, I respectfully request your board approve the award of the competitive RFP number 9844 to CH2M Hill to provide the specified services for analyzing the Sunset Industrial Area Railroad Overcrossing Project and authorize the Department of Public Works to negotiate a contract for these services.
Questions? Anybody from the public? We have a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion Weigand, second Holmes for item E. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And last but not least, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Last but not least, Mr. Garner.
Yes, thank you. This item is to seek adoption of a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to complete the necessary applications to receive $711,426,000 in Proposition 1B transit funds for 4 projects. 2 replacement buses for Placer County Transit, 1 replacement bus for Tahoe Area Regional Transit, automatic vehicle location system for passenger information, And number 4, onboard cameras for both Placer County Transit and Tahoe Area Regional Transit. The project list is identified on page 171. And certainly can answer any questions if you'd like to expand on that.
Questions to staff? Any members of the public wish to address the board? Do we have a motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion Montgomery, second Holmes, to approve item 15F. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That concludes action items of the board. We do have closed session. And counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will now go into closed session, take up the items on page 5, item number 17. We will not be talking about the Brian Johnson litigation as listed, but as indicated at the beginning of the meeting today, we will discuss the right-of-way acquisition down on the Auburn-Folsom Road down near Douglas project. And as indicated on page 179 of the board's agenda, we will report back later.
All right. Thank you.